Chapter 2547. Big Trouble. Leviathan Aberrantigimus' expression changed drastically. If it was just Qinzhao, he wouldn't be afraid, even if he was wary. At the same time, if it was just Akolati Gisli, he wouldn't even need to be wary. But if the two of them were together, they would be too much of a threat to him. He couldn't enter Akolati Gisli's range. Otherwise, once they were controlled by him, both the main body and the doppelganger would not be able to escape death. Leviathan Aberrantigimus held his breath and concentrated, thinking of a countermeasure. He had many spells, but most of them weren't suitable for the current situation. Suddenly, one of Leviathan Aberrantigimus' doppelgangers began to shrink. Soon, it was the size of an insect. Qinzhao moved. Suddenly, he appeared before the shrunken Leviathan Aberrantigimus and grabbed it. "What are you thinking? Do you really think you can reduce the area of attack by shrinking?" For people at their level, the small world could directly capture the enemy's position and lock onto them in the most precise way. If the enemy was bigger, it would indeed be easier to attack. But if they shrank when they didn't have an advantage in speed and strength, the result would be the same as Leviathan Aberrantigimus. Qinzhao grabbed it in his hand. Qinzhao pinched the clone to death and tossed it to Akolati Gisli. The other clones of Leviathan Aberrantigimus didn't look too good. Clearly, they'd thought too simply. Qinzhao was far more difficult to deal with than they'd imagined. "Go restrain Akolati, we'll seal him!" Leviathan Aberrantigimus communicated with each other. They didn't rely on sound to communicate. Instead, they communicated through mental resonance. The other Leviathan Aberrantigimus clones nodded. This human was far more difficult to deal with than they'd expected. In the past, when humans couldn't deal with them, they always liked to use seals. This was a very helpless choice. But now, they had to use this passive method. Among the many spells that Leviathan Aberrantigimus had mastered, there was no lack of sealing magic. After Qinzhao and Akolati Gisli destroyed 2 of the clones, Leviathan Aberrantigimus took the risk to add 5 more. There were a total of 10 original bodies and clones. 1 went to restrain Akolati Gisli, while the other 9 surrounded Qinzhao. Just then, Qinzhao noticed that there was something wrong with their positions. Qinzhao did not like the feeling of being surrounded by enemies from all directions. "Qin, be careful. They have a lot of seals. They're going to..." Before Akolati Gisli could finish, a clone of Leviathan Aberrantigimus approached him and interrupted him. "It's too late," the 9 Leviathan Aberrantigimus said coldly at the same time. At that moment, the 9 Leviathan Aberrantigimus clones erupted with powerful magic power at the same time. Seeing this, Qinzhao immediately tried to break through. But in the next instant, a terrifying force descended from the sky. She slapped him to the ground. A gigantic magic array appeared in the sky. Waves of frightening power burst forth from the magic array. It kept pressuring Qinzhao below. Qinzhao endured the immense pressure. The power kept increasing. At first, it was not unbearable. But as time passed, the power grew stronger and stronger. A magic array also appeared on the ground. The power above seemed to want to press Qinzhao into the magic array on the ground. Qinzhao had to fly into the air. "Come on," Leviathan Aberrantigimus said. "This guy is too strong. Without sealing spells, I really don't know how to deal with this guy." Qinzhao suddenly charged toward the Leviathan Aberrantigimus clone in front of him. However, the same power immediately appeared before the Leviathan Aberkan clone and forced Qinzhao back. Big trouble. Qinzhao did not plan on being sealed. Qinzhao looked into the distance. Akolati Gisli was also being held up by a clone. He could not escape at all. Qinzhao took a deep breath and crossed his palms. Neutron star. He could not count on anyone else now. Qinzhao did not want to give up, so he could only save himself. "What's that move? I didn't copy it. I don't know. It can't be copied. It must be a top-level spell. Let's be careful." Both the original body and the clone knew how difficult this human was. Leviathan Aberrant Tegemus knew that the key to this battle was to seal Qin Zhao. As long as he could successfully seal Qin Zhao, everything would be fine. But if he failed, only death awaited them. Qin Zhao had to endure the immense pressure from the seal. The power that fell from above continued to stack up. Qin Zhao did not just have to resist the power falling from the sky. He also had to compress the air so that Neutron Star would not be wasted. Moreover, if Neutron Star was interrupted, even if the half-finished product exploded in front of him, it would still cause great damage to him. This move almost belonged to the kind of killing move where it was either you die or I die. It was powerful, but if it failed, the backlash would be extremely serious. Ah! Qin Zhao roared. He had not gone all out in a long time. He felt all the pores on his body open up. The power was released bit by bit. The power above his head kept increasing. At the same time, he had to maintain Neutron Star's power too. Qin Zhao was really using all his strength now. His body started turning red. Then the Nirvana flame suddenly started burning on him. Neutron Star was not only absorbing the surrounding air, but also the Nirvana flame. Every minute was a test for Qin Zhao. No, every second. But Qin Zhao was not the only one who felt pressure. Outside, Leviathan Aberrant Tegemus and his 8 doppelgangers also felt tremendous pressure. Their magic power was not limitless. But to maintain this seal, or rather, to seal Qin Zhao, it was more difficult than they had imagined. I need more clones. My magic power is about to be used up. I also need a doppelganger to take my place, Ezechen said. I also need one here. Leviathan Aberrant Tegemus' main body could only release magic power while enduring the pain to replace 3 clones. Let's work harder. He shouldn't be able to last long. 9 Heavens God King. Chapter 2548. It was done! Suddenly, a dark golden ball of light shot toward the Leviathan Aberrant Tegemus clone in front of Qin Zhao. The dark golden ball streaked through the air at an extreme speed. Moreover, it passed through the barrier in front of Leviathan Aberrant Tegemus clone without any hindrance. Pop! The moment the dark golden ball of light came into contact with Leviathan Aberrant Tegemus avatar, the Leviathan Aberrant Tegemus avatar exploded. Qin Zhao snapped his fingers. The structure of the neutron star collapsed instantly. Hundreds of millions of tons of matter spread out. At the same time, the compressed nirvana flames also spread out. The body of Leviathan Aberrant Tegemus clone disintegrated in an instant. His body didn't shatter. Instead, he was molecularized. A ball of light spread out at a speed of 1/10,000th of a second. Then there were the Leviathan Aberrant Tegemus clones on the left and right. Half of the bodies of the 2 clones were affected, and then the other half of their bodies disappeared. The diameter of the ball instantly reached close to 1 meter, but it didn't continue spreading. Instead, it was replaced by a shockwave that was obviously much weaker but had a wider range. Of the 5 clones on the left, 1 was vaporized, 2 were affected by the ball of light, and the other 2 were sent flying by the shockwave. The nearly perfect formation collapsed in an instant. *T! Leviathan Aberrant Tegemus exclaimed. Qin Zhao was also ready. The moment the 5 clones left the casting position of the magic formation, Qin Zhao activated his power. Qin Zhao punched at the power falling from above. Boom! The 2 powers collided instantly. Both of them spread out their powers evenly. If it was before, the magic formation could dissolve 90% of the power. Then, the 9 clones and the 9 clones would share the remaining power. But now, the 5 clones had left the magic formation. The remaining 3 clones and 1 of the clones would have to share all the power. Bang! The 2 clones exploded on the spot. Heavily injured by the power, 1 clone and 1 of the clones were sent flying. Qin Zhao didn't have time to catch his breath. His body turned into energy, and he killed the Leviathan Aberrant Tegemus clone that was fighting with Aqualati Geisley. Don't give him a chance to breathe! Aqualati Geisley roared. For the past 20 minutes or so, he had been suppressed by Leviathan aberrant Tigemus. It was too stifling. However, at that time, he was able to keep his composure and did not panic excessively. He was waiting for Chen Zhao's counterattack. He knew that Chen Zhao wouldn't just sit there and do nothing. As expected, Chen Zhao didn't disappoint him. Aqualati Gaslight pounced on a Leviathan aberrant Tigemus clone whose body had been half destroyed by Chen Zhao's neutron star. It directly dug out that piece of flesh from his body and swallowed it. At this moment, the other heavily injured Leviathan aberrant Tigemus stood up with great difficulty. But in the next moment, Aqualati Gisli didn't wait to digest the previous food and pounced on the clone again. Aqualati Gaslight didn't try to hide this time. Instead, he used his huge body to overwhelm his opponent. There were also two clones whose bodies had half disappeared. Aqualati Gaslight used his tentacles to drag the two defenseless Leviathan aberrant Tigemus clones in front of him. As he devoured more and more of Leviathan aberrant Tigemus flesh, he could feel his life force becoming stronger and stronger. On the other hand, Chen Zhao went directly to Leviathan aberrant Tigemus' main body. Chen Zhao, on the other hand, went straight to Leviathan aberrant Tigemus' main body. But when he saw Chen Zhao pounce on him, he was so scared that he almost peed his pants. Chen Zhao was definitely the scariest enemy he had ever met. But when he saw Chen Zhao pounce on him, he was so scared that he almost peed his pants. Leviathan aberrant Tigemus punched the mountain wall with his arm. Leviathan aberrant Tigemus's arms slammed against the mountain wall. Chen Zhao thought it was some kind of soundwave attack from Leviathan aberrant Tigemus. So, Chen Zhao paused his attack and switched to defense. After all, not long ago, he had almost lost his life because of his carelessness. But it seemed like he was overthinking. This wasn't a magic attack. It was a signal? Just then, the ground started cracking open. A huge meatball charged out of the crack. As soon as the meatball saw Chen Zhao, it opened its mouth and bit at him. While biting, it also unleashed a terrifying mental attack on Chen Zhao. Otherworldly God. Chen Zhao punched and the otherworldly god's body was torn into pieces. At the same time, he grabbed the otherworldly god's heart and crushed it. A year ago, Chen Zhao might have had a headache over the otherworldly god's strength. But now, this otherworldly god couldn't even be arrogant for a second before Chen Zhao. Profound attack? It couldn't even affect Chen Zhao a year ago, let alone now. Just when Chen Zhao thought this was Leviathan aberrant Tigemus' final struggle, more otherworldly gods charged out of the crack. These otherworldly gods were rather fearless. At least, they felt that Chen Zhao was easy to bully. So, the first thing they did was attack Chen Zhao. But Chen Zhao didn't like being surrounded like this. Their attacks were meaningless, but they hindered Chen Zhao. "Chen, stop those otherworldly gods!" Aqualati Ghastly shouted. "They're good stuff." Good stuff? Chen Zhao didn't think they were good stuff. They are raised by Tigemus. Each of them has a considerable amount of vitality, and they can be obtained by eating them. Chen Zhao's expression changed slightly, but he looked at Leviathan aberrant Tigemus again. "You're not afraid that he'll run?" "He can't," Aqualati Ghastly said confidently. Aqualati Gisli said confidently. "Although this guy is insidious and despicable, he did something that he regretted for the rest of his life. He completely integrated his domain with Devil Island. Although this gave him great power, it also made him unable to leave Devil Island for the rest of his life." At this moment, more than a dozen otherworldly gods had already fled. Most of them chose to attack Chen Zhao. But a large portion of otherworldly gods weren't stupid. They didn't know how strong Chen Zhao was. They just wanted to escape. There were also many otherworldly gods with low intelligence. They didn't attack Chen Zhao, but they paced around the island. Chen Zhao was still hesitant. Should he deal with Leviathan aberrant Tigemus first? Or should he control these otherworldly gods first? As for the otherworldly gods that had escaped, Chen Zhao didn't care at all. There were plenty of tall people in the world. He didn't have to worry about them. 9 Heaven's God King. Chapter 2549. Leviathan Abrahantegmus had raised too many otherworldly gods. There were both mature and young ones. There were countless of them, big and small. You catch these otherworldly gods, Qin Zhao said. I'll deal with Leviathan Aberrantigimus. Qin Zhao really wasn't suitable to deal with these otherworldly gods. Leviathan Abrahantegmus really agreed to Qin Zhao's conditions. Everything else was fine, but he couldn't give Demon Island to anyone else. This was his territory. He couldn't escape either. Come, I'll use your flesh and blood to create a clone. Qin Zhao stared at Leviathan Aberrantigimus fiercely. Why did Leviathan Abrahantegmus release all the otherworldly gods he had reared? He wanted them to delay Qin Zhao and Aqualati's awkward operation. He wanted to think of a way to deal with Qin Zhao. But Qin Zhao didn't give him a chance to think. Leviathan Aberrantigimus tore off 2 pieces of flesh from his body and turned them into clones. Stop him! However, how much time could 2 doppelgangers buy him? It would probably buy him about 10 seconds of time. Then 2 pieces of his flesh were thrown to Aqualati Gisli. Leviathan Aberrantigimus' expression changed again. But seeing that Qin Zhao was getting closer, Leviathan Aberrantigimus could only give it his all. Leviathan Aberrantigimus suddenly took out a long golden needle. This needle was only a meter long. In front of Leviathan Aberrantigimus' huge body, it was almost the size of a pin. The moment Leviathan Aberrantigimus took out the pin he didn't change for the worse. Instead, he became excited. I've been waiting for this. Qin Zhao's body suddenly turned into energy. He pounced at Leviathan's palm. Whoosh! Leviathan Aberrantigimus' palm was pierced through. Qin Zhao had already grabbed the pin. But to Leviathan Aberrantigimus, it was a big deal. But to Qin Zhao, it was a spearhead. Qin Zhao wasn't in a hurry to kill Leviathan Aberran because he was waiting for him to take out the divine artifact. Leviathan Aberrantigimus held the divine artifact in his hand. Qin Zhao believed that Leviathan Aberrantigimus wouldn't hide the divine artifact when his life was in danger. Perhaps he didn't use it just now because this divine artifact had some limitations. Perhaps it was because he had just used it on himself, so there was a time limit. Or perhaps there were other conditions to use it. Give it back to me! Leviathan Aberrantigimus was anxious. That was a divine artifact, his final trump card. Ha! Qin Zhao grinned at Leviathan Aberrantigimus. You're about to die. Why are you still thinking about the divine artifact? It's such a waste to bury it with you. You should make the best use of it. Aqualati, don't worry about those otherworldly gods. Get ready for a feast. Aqualati Gisli's huge body rushed over. Usually, he would wriggle slowly. But now, he was charging over with all his strength. Aqualati, I've enslaved you in the past, but I've never mistreated you. You've also broken free. If you want, I can let you devour half of my life force, but there's really no need for us to fight to the death. After all, there aren't many demons in this world, and there are even fewer who are qualified to talk to you. Aqualati Gisli looked at Qin Zhao. He's right. I suddenly don't want to kill him anymore. Oh. Then let him go. Qin Zhao replied in an equally serious tone. Okay. Just as Aqualati Dan said yes, the huge tentacle had already slammed towards Leviathan Aberrantigimus. Leviathan Aberrantigimus immediately raised his sword and slashed. Aqualati Gisli's tentacle was cut off directly. But then, Qin Zhao had already circled behind Leviathan Aberrantigimus and struck the back of his head. Aqualati Gisli's other tentacles had already stretched out, binding Leviathan Aberrantigimus like a rice dumpling. In terms of actual combat ability, Leviathan Aberrantigimus was countless times stronger than Aqualati Gisli. But if Aqualati Gisli's tentacles controlled Leviathan Aberrantigimus, the Leviathan would not be able to survive. Leviathan Aberrantigimus definitely wouldn't be able to break free from Aqualati Gisli's restraints. Leviathan Aberrantigimus's head injury healed quickly and he came back to his senses. But now, he was tightly entangled by Aqualati Gisli. Aqualati, stop! By then, Aquilati Gisli had already used his suckers to tear off a piece of Leviathan Aberantigemus's flesh. Delicious, really delicious. This time, Leviathan Aberantigemus didn't have a chance to recover. Aquilati Gisli's tentacles drilled into Leviathan Aberantigemus's wound. Stop! Aquilati, I'm willing to accept your control. I'm willing to be your slave. Qin Zhao wiped his mouth. Aquilati, don't make it so bloody. It's disgusting. Aquilati Gisli stuffed Leviathan Aberantigemus's mouth. Will this reduce the disgust? Yes, a little better. Leviathan Aberantigemus didn't escape death in the end. The entire process lasted for 3 hours. Aquilati Gisli couldn't devour him directly. He needed time to digest. If he swallowed Leviathan Aberantigemus whole, he might even devour Aquilati Gisli instead. So, Aquilati Gisli needed to devour and digest a little. Of course, Leviathan Aberantigemus's pain and despair also lasted for 3 hours. Finally done. Aquilati Gisli transformed back into his human form. Who are you? Qin Zhao looked at the muscular man before him. Of course I'm Aquilati Gisli. I'm full of vitality now. Can I be a little extravagant? Change back to that old man's appearance. I'm not used to your current appearance, really not, Qin Zhao complained. Also, technically speaking, your life force was copied from me. You're wasting my life force. No. I'll beat you up if you don't. Let's do it. Aquilati Gisli turned back into an old man. 9 Heavens Divine King. Chapter 2550. How come there's only the 3 of you left in the psionic team? Qin Zhao looked at Toddy Belster, Yanghua, and Akrabuman. Yanghua's eyes were filled with anger. Qin Zhao, can you explain why your battle affected us? Qin Zhao's face was full of mockery. You think our battle affected you? I think you're a hindrance. Yanghua clenched his fists. He wanted to hit Qin Zhao. He knew he couldn't beat Qin Zhao. But he didn't care. He was just worried that if he did it himself, it would affect Toddy Belster and his wife. He'd known in the past. At that time, he didn't think Qin Zhao was so strong that he couldn't surpass him. But now, he finally understood how big the gap between him and Qin Zhao was. It was a gap that made him feel despair. In the past few hours, the battle between Qin Zhao, Leviathan Aberantigemus, and Aquilati Gisli. It was like a fight between gods. But it also made the mortals suffer. It was unreasonably terrifying. Leviathan Aberantigemus appeared like a meteor falling from the sky. It was his move that killed most of the psionic team on the beach. Toddy Belster and Yanghua were protected by Akrabuman. Fortunately, Akrabuman was a fire dragon. They were also more than 10 kilometers away from the center of impact. So, they weren't in the first range of impact. But Akrabuman couldn't protect too many people. That was why only a dozen or so people managed to survive. But this wasn't the final result. The battle between the 3 monsters kept impacting them. In the end, only Toddy Belster, Yanghua, and Akrabuman were left. The psionic team was almost completely wiped out. Akrabuman had been saved by Qin Zhao before. She thought that was Qin Zhao's full strength. But in the battle that followed, only then did she realize how terrifying Qin Zhao was. As a dragon, she was naturally much stronger than humans. Even her husband was much weaker than her. So, she had a natural sense of superiority. However, this sense of superiority was gone in front of Qin Zhao. I warned you a long time ago that this is not a place you should come to. But you came, and you even brought your wife. How brave. You even brought a household register to die. You should thank me, Qin Zhao said mockingly. If I didn't come, you two would have died on the same day. Also, you should be thankful that you have a good elder. After all, you have someone to take care of you, but others don't. I don't need your care. Don't you need it? If you think that being saved by me will make you feel ashamed, you can go and die now. Yanghua's face turned red and white. Yanghua looked at Toddy Belster. She didn't speak to him, but turned around and left. Toddy Belster's heart had also trembled just now. He was really afraid that Qin Zhao would burn the bridge after crossing it. He had to admit that Qin Zhao had left a deep impression on him. It refreshed his understanding of power again and again. You have the bloodline of Leviathan now, right? Aqualati Gisli smiled bitterly. What are you thinking? How can the Demon King's bloodline be obtained by devouring? In hell, there are countless demons with the ability to devour, but I've never heard of anyone who can obtain the Demon King's bloodline through devouring. Can't I? What a pity, Qin Zhao said regretfully. I was quite jealous of one of Tajima's spells, Qin Zhao said regretfully. I thought you might be able to get his spells. That's right. I only devoured his life force, not his magic or bloodline. Fundamentally speaking, Aqualati Gisli's combat ability hadn't improved. Apart from his increased stamina. Originally, Aqualati Gisli's life was about to come to an end. This battle could be said to be his last resort. As his life force was about to run out, his combat ability would become weaker and weaker. But as he devoured Leviathan Aberrant Tajima's life force, he could only say that he had recovered to his peak state. This didn't mean that he could obtain Leviathan Aberrant Tajima's power. It did not mean that he could obtain the power of Leviathan Aberrant Tajimas. What magic do you want from him? If possible, we can look in his library. I hope his library hasn't been destroyed, asked Aqualati Gisli. It's the move that allows two swords to appear. That's summoning magic. Summoning magic? Were those swords created by some kind of magic? Instead, it was summoned? Yes, that spell is saint-level power. Legend has it that there is a holy realm. When a weapon has a soul, it is called a Holy Spirit weapon, and its soul will enter that holy realm, said Aqualati Gisli. Only those who are recognized by the Holy Spirit weapons can be summoned. In this world, no one can summon the same weapon. As long as the person recognized by the Holy Spirit weapon is alive, the Holy Spirit weapon will not be summoned by a second person. Did Tajimas summon a holy weapon as well? That's right, that pair of weapons is called the Black Lotus. Was the Black Lotus flower originally that big? No, the Holy Spirit weapon will automatically adjust its size according to the user's size. You know this spell. Do you know it? No. You don't even know how to do it. Qin Zhao immediately lost interest. Let's see if Tajima's library has any texts about this spell, Aqualati Gisli said. But this spell doesn't mean anything to you, does it? The Black Lotus is one of the most powerful Holy Spirit weapons, but you can directly break the Black Lotus. The other Holy Spirit weapons are about the same to you. Even if you summon the strongest Holy Spirit weapon, I'm afraid it still won't be able to withstand your torment. It's not because the Holy Spirit weapon is powerful, Qin Zhao said calmly. The Black Lotus was Qin Zhao's style. So, Qin Zhao really liked the Black Lotus and not other Holy Spirit weapons. When he heard Aqualati Gisli say that in order to summon a Holy Spirit weapon, he first had to be recognized by the weapon, Qin Zhao almost lost interest. Qin Zhao felt that since he had broken the Black Lotus so many times, it was basically impossible for him to get its recognition, let alone summon it. As for other Holy Spirit weapons, Qin Zhao really wasn't interested. Unless he could summon a weapon even cooler than the Black Lotus. Of course, it would be best if it was black. Chapter 2551. Qin Zhao and Aqualati Gisli came to the crack that had been opened earlier. But now, the crack on the ground had been blocked by Aqualati Gisli with ink. It's a pity that many otherworldly gods escaped earlier. How many are left? Not many, only 100 or so. Aqualati Gisli sighed. What a pity! Qin Zhao and Aqualati Gisli entered the crack. These otherworldly gods can be eaten directly? Obtain vitality? Yes. Even ordinary people can eat it? Yes, but ordinary people can only obtain very little vitality. They need to eat it for a long time to get some effect, Aqualati Gisli said. Even spiritualists need a special way to absorb the vitality in the flesh of the otherworldly god. Also, the eye of the one-eyed otherworldly god can increase one's spiritual power. It can be obtained by cooking and eating directly. Ordinary people can obtain it too. Qinzhao and Aqualati Gasly walked in the damp passage. Occasionally, there were some demons struggling at death's door. They hid underground and escaped the calamity on the surface. If they were shivering in a corner, Qinzhao and Aqualati Gasly wouldn't be bothered to deal with them. However, there were some demons who thought they had a bit of strength. Some had grand ideas and thought they could succeed in a sneak attack. Qinzhao and Aqualati Gasly basically didn't show any mercy. They directly let them meet their master. Just then, a black figure appeared before Qinzhao and Aqualati Gasly. It appeared without any warning. Qinzhao and Aqualati Gasly didn't even realize how it had appeared. Qinzhao looked up. It was the giant black panther, Pentagon, whom they'd met in the cave on the mountainside. "Pentagon, are you going to block our way?" Aqualati Gasly narrowed his eyes at Pentagon. "You should know what happened up there, right?" Qinzhao stood behind. Pentagon and Aqualati Gasly knew each other. They seemed to have a close relationship. Pentagon hadn't done anything in the cave. Pentagon looked at Qinzhao and Aqualati Gasly with sparkling eyes. His eyes sparkled as he stared at Qinzhao and Aqualati Gasly. Although she had been hiding underground, this did not prevent her from spying on the battle above. She knew how tragic this battle was. Neither of the two people in front of her was a match for her. Qinzhao was especially terrifying. Even her previous master couldn't fight against him. "How do you plan to deal with the Demon Island now?" "Demon Island belongs to him now," Aqualati Gasly said, pointing at Qinzhao. "If you want to stay, you can only ask him. I will not accept any form of slavery. I'm not interested in enslaving you," Qinzhao said indifferently. Perhaps Pentagon was not weak. But it was just not weak. Her strength should be similar to Kang Mosa's. He also had his own domain. However, in front of Qinzhao and Aqualati Gasly, it was clearly not enough. Aqualati Gasly glanced at Qinzhao. They exchanged glances and Qinzhao nodded slightly. Although the two didn't speak, Qinzhao roughly understood what Aqualati Gasly meant. He was asking Aqualati if he could make the decision. Perhaps he had a good relationship with Pentagon. Aqualati Gasly didn't want Qinzhao to make the decision. After all, if Qinzhao made the decision, it might be very bad for Pentagon. "What if you hire me?" "Hire? The otherworldly god here needs someone to raise and take care of it. Also, some things here need to be guarded," Aqualati Gasly said. "There are still a lot of demons left here. They won't be allowed to be released, so for them, they either have to die or be locked up. Do you want to be the warden or the prisoner?" Aqualati Gasly said. It wasn't a difficult choice. Pentagon obviously chose the former. Was it a multiple-choice question? It was a mental test, right? Pentagon went to gather the demons who hadn't died. Of course, she also went to suppress the demons who still had other thoughts. After all, Leviathan Abhantegmus had ruled the Demon Island for 2,000 years. Naturally, there were many loyal confidants. Or a demon with ambition. Pentagon had to prove his worth. When Qinzhao and Aqualati Gasly arrived at Leviathan Abhantegmus Ranch, they saw a huge otherworldly god. The otherworldly god's body hung in the air. Its tentacles were connected to the surrounding stalactites. There was an opening on its lower body. It looked like a reproductive organ. There were many large and small meat eggs around it. Some were several meters long, while others were the size of basketballs. At the same time, there were some baby otherworldly gods that had hatched from the eggs. "This is the mother," Aqualati Gasly said. "It's a pity that dozens of otherworldly gods escaped, but as long as the mother is here, they can escape. The mother can't move. It's already merged with the environment, and is the only non-aggressive otherworldly god here." Aqualati Gasly pulled off a larva attached to his arm. The larva was too small, only the size of a palm. Aqualati Gasly threw the baby out, and the other otherworldling gods rushed up in an instant and swallowed their brothers. "Do they just eat each other?" "The mother will lay eggs every once in a while. Each time, it lays thousands of eggs. However, after these thousands of eggs hatch, they will begin to devour each other. In the end, only a few otherworldly gods will survive. From a scientific perspective, this method is very inefficient. It can't be helped. If someone interferes, they can't grow. They start eating by eating their brothers and sisters. Other than their brothers and sisters, what else do they eat? Do they eat humans? Their food list is very wide. They can eat almost anything that humans can eat. Tijimas catches fish from the sea as their food, and they have a very powerful psychic mutation ability. Sometimes the food we throw at them will directly turn into fallen mutants. Look at that turtle-like creature that is clinging to the wall over there. That is already a fallen mutant. Won't the otherworldly god eat the fallen mutants? Yes. When an unusual god matures, it will form its own army of fallen mutants. However, those within this range are all fallen mutants of the Matrix. Although the Matrix won't attack, there won't be any unusual god here that will attack the Matrix and its fallen mutants. 9 Heaven's Divine Emperor. Chapter 2552. In some ways, the otherworldly god was truly powerful. He had directly turned the food into a lackey. These fallen mutants need to be cleaned up regularly. If there are too many fallen mutants in the hands of the otherworld god, there is a high chance that they will rebel against the guards here. There are many powerful otherworldly gods here. Can the guards here suppress them? After the death of Leviathan Aberrantigimus, his domain had completely vanished. Therefore, Qinzhao's territory was no longer restricted. He could easily cover most of the farms. Within Qinzhao's territory, there were a dozen terrifyingly powerful otherworldly gods. On the other hand, the average strength of the devil guards here was very average. Most of them were low-level demons, with 1 or 2 being mid-level demons. Normal guards can't suppress those powerful otherworldly gods, but Pennigan can. And these mature otherworldly gods will be enchanted, the kind of magic that won't kill you, but will make you very uncomfortable. Basically, every demon guard can control the enchantment. If the otherworldly god dares to attack, they can directly activate the enchantment. Although it can't guarantee a certain percentage of safety, it can at least give them some assurance. How long is their breeding cycle? The larval stage lasts for about 2 years. During these 2 years, they will constantly devour each other. When they stop devouring each other, it means that they have entered the growth stage. In fact, they are already edible at this stage, but in terms of size, it would be a waste to eat them at this stage. If there is enough food, this stage will last for about 5 years. If there is not enough food, they will continue to devour each other until they reach the second stage of maturity. This stage will last for about 20 years. According to human standards, they will enter a fully mature body at about 27 years old. However, the older the alien god, the more powerful they will be, and at the same time, the better the quality of food will be. Aquilati Ghastly paused and continued. In terms of economic benefits, the unusual gods of about 50 years old are the most profitable, but there should be a few unusual gods of thousands of years old here. Tijimas has been raising them for a long time, so there's no need to kill them. Every time he needs to, he can cut off a piece of their flesh, then give them food, and they will soon recover. According to Aquilati Gisli's calculations, the total number of otherworldly gods here could provide about 5 otherworldly gods around the age of 50 every year. In fact, according to Aquilati Gisli, raising the otherworldling gods was like most animal husbandry. The better the otherworldling gods were, the higher the returns. If they didn't raise them well, the profits wouldn't be good, and they might even suffer a loss. The otherworldly god was extremely precious. That was why Aquilati Ghastly arranged for Pennigan to be in charge of the breeding and the management of the remaining demons on the island. After all, either he nor Qinzhao could stay here. Moreover, Pennigan was definitely more suitable than Qinzhao and Aquilati Gisli. Are there any of the otherworldly gods that escaped? A few, I guess. But in the past, otherworldly gods often ran away. Qinzhao had encountered otherworldly gods a few times before, and they seemed to have escaped from Demon Island. After checking the situation of the breeding farm, Chen Zhao and Aqualati Gisli prepared to go to the library. Aqualati, do you know how to use this? Qin Zhao took out the starlight pointer that he'd stolen from Leviathan Aberrantegmus. Aqualati Gisli raised an eyebrow. You got it? Yes. Aqualati Gisli took the starlight pointer. He tried to input magic power, but there was no reaction. Then he returned it to Qin Zhao. I don't know how to use it either. Maybe there are relevant records in the library. Fine. Qin Zhao put it away in disappointment. The library was built inside the mountain wall. Although the entrance had been destroyed, the internal structure hadn't suffered a destructive blow. Just then, an old demon appeared before Qin Zhao. He was short and shriveled, looking just a bit bigger than an inferior demon. He held a cane and was covered in rough linen. His demonic face was already covered in wrinkles. Qin Zhao glanced at Aqualati Gisli, using his eyes to ask what was going on with this old demon. Your original master is dead, Aqualati Gisli said, pointing at Qin Zhao. Now he's the new master. Hello, master. I'm Gould Padinka, an Awa demon. The Awa demons are very, very weak, but they live longer than most demons, Aqualati Gisli said. This Gould Padinka is almost 5,000 years old. If there are no accidents, he can live for at least another 3,000 years. He's very weak, but he's very familiar with the books here. Time has given him a lot of time to read them. Master, Lord Aqualati, please follow me. Gould Padinka didn't have any intention to resist. To him, it didn't matter who was his master. All he needed to do was to do what he was supposed to do and ensure that his value existed. No one would make things difficult for a weak demon like him. This old demon had lived more clearly than anyone else. After passing through a few hundred meters, the three arrived at the library. The library was a circular space with a diameter of about 100 meters. The bookshelves were also curved and arranged in circles. Do the books here have sacred power? Aqualati Gisli asked. Yes, please follow me. Gould Patinka circled around the bookshelves a few times and took down a book with a metal cover from one of the shelves. The bark was made of gold, black, and red metal. There was also a demon carving on it. This is saint-level power to begin with. Chen Zhao flipped through it. There was a lot of content in the book. He couldn't finish it in a while, so he put it away. Is there nirvana? Chen Zhao asked. Gould Padinka thought for a moment and answered. Yes, please follow me. Then, Gould Patinka found a bookshelf and took out a scroll from it. Master, this is nirvana magic, but it only records the basics of nirvana magic. 9 Heavens Divine King. Chapter 2553. The more basic, the better. Chen Zhao was very satisfied. Are there any books about the Starlight Compass? No, Gould Padinka answered. Chen Zhao was a bit disappointed, but he didn't take it to heart. The Starlight Compass was undoubtedly good stuff. But there was still a long way to go. Chen Zhao wasn't in a rush to get it. To Qin Zhao, this was the icing on the cake. Qin Zhao didn't plan on taking the magic books back. He'd just leave them here. If he needed them, he could come back and get them. Plus, Gould Padinka was watching. He could pick out any book he needed immediately. If he messed up the books when he brought them back, finding a book would be like finding a needle in a haystack. By the way, did we forget about the 2 pirates? Aqualati Gisli asked, chuckling. I hope they weren't affected. Chen Zhao shrugged. Qin Zhao and Aqualati Gisli found Cimenta and Hupri in the cave. They were halfway up the mountain and had the cave as cover. Although they were affected, it wasn't fatal. But when Qin Zhao and Aqualati Gisli stood before them, Qin Zhao and Aqualati Gisli, they were still terrified. After all, they didn't know how Qin Zhao and Aqualati Gisli would treat them. In the face of these two, all their tricks became meaningless. Why did Tegmus bring her here? I don't know. Aqualati Gisli shook his head. Qin Zhao and Aqualati Gisli both stared at Cimenta with scrutinizing eyes. Unfortunately, after studying for a long time, they couldn't find anything on Cimenta. Something that could make Cimenta receive Leviathan Aberantegmus's favor. Of course, it might not be favor either. Forget it. Let's go back. Chen Zhao shook his head. Do you want to go back together? Wasn't that obvious? Staying here to drink the demon's company? The four landed on the island and left together. The research ship was full of unclean things. But for Qin Zhao and Aqualati Gisli, it wasn't a big deal. On the way back, Qin Zhao's mind was filled with how to deal with the huge piece of gold. Almost 20,000 tons of gold, which was more than a quarter of the gold circulating in the world. Of course, it was almost impossible to sell this batch of gold at its original price. Moreover, he estimated that it would take at least 20 to 30 years to sort it all out. The amount of gold was simply too huge. Aqualati, what do you plan to do next? I don't have any plans. It's the same as before. Continue to cause trouble? Qin Zhao gave Aqualati Gasly a meaningful look. If that's the case, you'd better leave my territory. After all, if you bring me trouble, maybe we'll break off our relationship next time. I will withdraw all my forces from California. Of course, I might withdraw to even further places. Aqualati Gasly didn't like facing Qin Zhao either. That kind of power was so strong that it made people afraid. He really didn't want to face it. Especially as an enemy. By the way, can you sell me some gold? How much are you going to charge? Qin Zhao asked. 20% of the market price. Qin Zhao glanced at Aqualati Gasly silently. Fine, how much do you want? Aqualati Gasly felt that his offer was indeed a bit low. 70% of the market price. Qin Zhao said. Then what's the difference between buying it from the market? This batch of gold had no origin or registration. There was nothing. Under normal circumstances, it couldn't be circulated. If he wanted to circulate this batch of gold in the market, it would require a very complicated process. It was like money laundering. The cost of this process would be reduced by almost 30%. He might even lose money. Aqualati Gasly offered to buy some gold from Qin Zhao. The most fundamental goal was to resell it and earn the difference in price. But if he bought it at 70% of the market price, he might only earn money for Qin Zhao. In that case, he might only earn money for Qin Zhao. He probably wouldn't earn a single cent and would even have to pay for it. Then how much? 40% of the market price. Let's both take a step back, 60%. That's not taking a step back. It should be 50%. 55%. Anything lower than that. Qin Zhao said. Fine, 55% of the market price. I want 20 tons. Only 20 tons? Qin Zhao pursed his lips. 20 tons is already very difficult. Aqualati Gasly said. I can give you low-interest installments. Qin Zhao said. You can hide a bit. Forget it. The price of gold in the market has been very unstable recently. No matter how unstable it is, it won't fall to 55%. No matter what, you won't lose money. If you buy more, you'll have a high chance of making a profit. After all, the American government has to stabilize the price of gold to maintain their purchasing power in dollars. How much interest are you planning to charge? 6% per year. Aqualati Gasly shook his head. No, the interest you're paying is too high. Definitely lower than the banks. That's different. Aqualati Gasly shook his head. You didn't pay anything and you're charging 6% per year. What do you mean I didn't pay anything? I'm giving you more gold. Isn't that paying? For you, it means you didn't pay anything. We all know that it's hard to sell your gold in a short time. When the two bargained, they were no different from normal businessmen. In the end, they agreed on a price. Aqualati Gasly bought 200 tons of gold for $4. 4 billion. That allowed Aqualati Gisli to increase the purchase volume by 10 times. However, he only paid $400 million in advance, which meant that he still owed Qin Zhao $4 billion. He would pay Qin Zhao in installments over 5 years. The interest Qin Zhao gave Aqualati Gasly was 4% per year. This meant that Aqualati Gasly had to pay Qinzhao $4. 8 billion in total. Of course, Qinzhao was actually very willing to give him more gold. Of course, he was also willing to lower the interest and extend the repayment period. However, Aqualati Gasly was more knowledgeable about finance than Qinzhao. If he extended the repayment period, his income would be further reduced. Qinzhao considered asking his close friends if they needed some gold as a trump card. To put it bluntly, Qinzhao's behavior was killing acquaintances. Of course, Qinzhao could lower their risks appropriately and increase their profits as well. Chapter 2554. Of course, he wasn't in a hurry to get rid of the gold. After all, it was impossible to get rid of such a large amount of gold every few decades. Qinzhao still cared more about his skills. If he didn't have Neutron Star, Qinzhao might have really failed. Regardless of whether it was intentional or not, the studio had really helped him a lot this time. This time, they didn't take a boat to the west coast. Instead, they docked at the Charleston port on the east coast, greatly reducing the distance. The whole journey took less than 2 days. Then, they flew back to Los Angeles. Home was indeed the most comfortable. Qinzhao had been away for a long time this time. Portia, this is for you. Because Qinzhao wasn't home, she basically had to do all the housework. Especially the kids. None of them were easy to deal with. Portia took it and looked. A bag? So heavy. Portia weighed it. Portia glanced at the bag. It was filled with golden beads. Fuck gold? Portia cursed, losing her composure. Qinzhao stretched his limbs and said calmly, If you think my gift is vulgar, you can give it back to me. No, it's not vulgar at all, Portia said, overjoyed. Boss, why did you suddenly change after one trip? No, it's just that I have too much money. Portia glanced at Qinzhao. Her expression was one of deep disgust. Portia, do you think there are any places in my house that can be changed to make me look rich? Portia's expression was lifeless. She'd always hated Qinzhao, and now she hated him even more. Boss, anyone who sees your manner will know that you're rich. You don't have to use extra things to pretend. I'm serious. Change all the bowls and chopsticks in your house to gold. That'll make you look really rich. Good idea. Qinzhao nodded. Best if you can make a gold car. You don't need to drive it. Just park it in the garage. When people come and see your car, they'll immediately see your collection. Portia looked at Qinzhao speechless. Qinzhao was a bit obsessed. He had an endless amount of gold, but he didn't know how to use it. It was a very painful feeling. So, Qinzhao was even worse now. Since it couldn't be exchanged for real wealth, it could be used to show off. Portia thought that Qinzhao's brain had really gone haywire. He actually thought that his rotten idea was good. Qinzhao picked up the phone. Amira, how are you? Not bad. When are you free? Now. If you're not free right now, we can arrange another day. Alright then. If you're free now, come over now. Soon, Amira arrived at Qinzhao's house. I heard that you've been out recently. Amira asked. Yes, I went to the sea. Qinzhao nodded. I want to ask you a question. What is it? When I went out to sea this time, I got a batch of gold. It's a bit big. How old? Anyway, there's a lot, Qinzhao said. So what do you plan to do? Do you want it? Me? If you want to sell it to me, I can only give you 40% of the market price at most. Qinzhao pursed his lips. Amira was much harder to deal with than Aqualati Gisli. How about I give you a plan? What plan? Mortgage it to the bank, Amira said. What's the difference between that and selling it to you? Of course. If you sell it to me, the profits and losses are all mine. But if you sell it to the bank, my shares in Citibank are less than 2%, and my family only has 6%. So, as long as I don't make any major mistakes, the bank's profits won't have much to do with me. If the bank loses money, you'll lose money too, right? The biggest value of my and my family's shares isn't in the board's dividends, but in keeping it safe. Plus, I won't do anything to harm the bank's interests. Then tell me your plan, Chen Zhao said. When you mortgage the gold to the bank, sign a mortgage agreement with the bank. If you don't pay on time, the gold will automatically belong to the bank. That's actually selling it to the bank, right? Yes, but there's a trick to this kind of mortgage agreement. You can't use less to make up for more. You can only use more to make up for less. Do I need to provide proof of gold production? You just need to provide proof of gold salvaging. You have to pay taxes for the profits from salvaging shipwrecks, right? You have to convert the gold into cash. Wait. Can this really work? The tax bureau won't give me any trouble? As long as the reason is legitimate. You can say that I only want to sell it for $1. Who can control how much you sell it for? So, I just need to mortgage it to the bank? Yes. The procedures are a bit complicated, but it's not impossible. You don't have to worry about most of the time. After all, you have your own lawyer. Then how much can I mortgage it for? That depends on how much gold you have. Give me a specific number. 300 tons. How much can I mortgage it for? Chen Zhao asked. Amira's eyes widened. 300 tons? Yes. Chen Zhao nodded. Even Amira, who was used to seeing the world, could not help but gasp. Are you serious? Yes. This is already the total loan for our entire California branch for a quarter. Can you get a loan? I'll have to report to the other directors about the loan amount that I can give you. You should also contact your lawyer as soon as possible. It's going to be a tough negotiation, Amira said. Amira left in a hurry, so Chen Zhao immediately contacted Alex. Alex, this is the exact situation. 300 tons of gold? Chen, did you wipe out the gold reserves of some countries' banks? Alex, are you sure this can be done? No problem. Tell me your bottom line. You don't need to know what my bottom line is. I'll give you a 3% commission. Chen, are you sure you want to give me a 3% commission? You have to know that 3% is definitely more than $100 million. I've never lied to you before. I understand. Alex nodded. Alex, if this can avoid taxes, does that mean all of my assets can be avoided like this? You're thinking too much. We can only do this time because of the bank's cooperation, because they've received enough benefits. But why should the bank cooperate with you for your other assets? Divine King of the Nine Heavens. Chapter 2555. Amira also received a reply soon. The negotiation officially started. The dollar was the gold standard. Therefore, American banks had a large amount of gold. The value of gold wasn't just reflected in the market price of $40 per gram. When gold reached a certain level, it could control the value of the currency. This was especially true for top banks like Citibank. 300 tons of gold wasn't just a matter of $10 billion. It could create far more value than that. If it were living things of the same value, Citibank might not even care. But gold was different, especially 300 tons of gold. It could even move the rise and fall of the dollar by 100 times. Citibank could even use this method to control the currency to make profits that were several times the value of the gold itself. Therefore, Chen Zhao's side had the initiative in this negotiation. Chen Zhao also wanted to sell the gold. But Andreas didn't know Chen Zhao's bottom line. Of course, a negotiation that involved $10 billion couldn't be decided with just a few words. Moreover, even the bank couldn't take out $10 billion directly. They also needed to raise cash and even move their reserves. The negotiation for this transaction had been completely handed over to Alex. Chen Zhao only needed to sign at the end. In the past 2 days, Andreas had greeted Chen Zhao more frequently. After all, he was Chen Zhao's financial manager. This meant that he could move more funds. Ms. Zhang, is it convenient to talk now? Yes. In fact, the studio was having a meeting right now. They were having a creative meeting. But Qin Zhao was their financial backer. Before their work could generate any economic benefits, Qin Zhao was their bread and butter. Even if it wasn't convenient, it had to be convenient. Due to your hard work, Qin Zhao said, I'm going to give you a bonus. Boss, we've only worked for you for less than a week. It's only a week, but I'm still happy, so I'm still going to give you a bonus. Jiang Ting was about to go crazy. From the start, she'd thought that Qin Zhao wasn't normal. Now, she was even more certain of her thoughts. What kind of boss would give bonuses for no reason? Your ICBC 6222XXXX received 2 million yuan. Boss, how much are you going to give? Didn't you receive 2 million? Huh? All of it? Yes, is there a problem? Our studio only has 15 people now. As the manager of the studio, your hard work is worthy of recognition, so you get 500,000 yuan, and the other employees get 100,000 yuan. Boss, the other two are the cleaning auntie and the security guard. What's wrong with the cleaner and the guard? Aren't they human beings? Aren't they employees of our studio? Send them all. Jiang Ting was speechless. Boss, tell me honestly, do you have too much money? Yes, Qin Zhao answered honestly. I got rich again recently. Boss, you're not doing some illegal business. You need our studio to launder money, right? What are you thinking? I just want to show my care for my employees. If you don't want the bonus, then forget it. Why do you have to make it sound so bad? Okay. Boss, I was wrong. I plan to invite you to Los Angeles for a week. Everything will be covered. Boss, the studio has reorganized itself. There's still a lot of work, and we're hiring new employees. No rush. You can put these things aside first. You need a good attitude. If you have the same attitude, how can you create good work? So, come here and relax. Boss, can we not go? No, Qin Zhao said firmly. What about the new employees? I brought them too. I don't need the money. Jiang Ting should have expected such an answer. What could she say? Ever since Qin Zhao took over the studio, he hadn't done anything serious. Qin Zhao was just like a child giving money away. He found ways to give them money. Logically speaking, this was a good thing. But Jiang Ting was uneasy. After all, she hadn't done anything. She just received Qin Zhao's bonus every day. Boss, when do you plan to go out? The sooner, the better. I've already booked a hotel for you. Why are you in such a hurry? Because I'm passionate. Jiang Ting really wanted to curse. Fuck your passion. 3 days later, Jiang Ting and the studio's employees walked out of the airport with different expressions. She was finally going to meet the rumored nouveau riche boss. Most of the employees had never gone abroad in their lives. This time, it wasn't just the new employees. Even the cleaning lady and the security guard came. At first, Jiang Ting thought that they didn't have passports. In the end, she realized that her worries were completely unnecessary. Hey, over here. Jiang Ting could already see Qin Zhao waving at the airport from afar. There was also a foreign woman beside Qin Zhao. Boss, hello? Jiang Ting walked over and greeted him. This is? I'm here to carry your luggage. Qin Zhao said casually. Let's go. I've arranged a car for you. Let's go to the hotel first. Qin Zhao brought Jiang Ting and the others directly to Dell and Risvar's hotel. He had already booked more than a dozen high-class rooms. When Jiang Ting and the others arrived at the entrance, they were shocked by the hotel's extravagance. Boss, how much does it cost for one night? I'm friends with the hotel owner, so there's a discount. As he spoke, Qin Zhao walked to the front desk and helped Jiang Ting and the others check in. Jiang Ting always felt that not only was Qin Zhao a nouveau riche, but he was also crazy and did whatever he wanted. When Qin Zhao brought them to the room, they were shocked again. Jiang Ting had seen the accounts just now. A suite like theirs cost $3,600 per night. Was the boss planning to sell them? It was also a loss-making promotion. Jiang Ting believed that even if they were sold, it wouldn't be enough to cover their expenses. You guys rest in the afternoon. Let's have dinner together. With that, Chen Zhao left. In the evening, Qin Zhao brought them to the hotel restaurant. Looking at the empty restaurant, Jiang Ting knew that her intuition had come true. Qin Zhao had spent on them again. Everyone was a little reserved in front of this rich boss. Come, let's have a drink with the boss, Jiang Ting said. I wish you a good business and a lot of money. Sure, let's have a drink, but I'll just drink juice. I need to drive. I don't want to drive drunk. No one here dared to force him to drink. After drinking the juice, Chen Zhao coughed. Standing up, he said, I have a small request this time. It's what I told you last time. Think of a move for me. 9 Heavens Divine King. Chapter 2556. Boss, why do you want us to think of these ideas? Jiang Ting still asked her own question. It was also everyone's question. Qin Zhao seemed to be very focused on this question. I have a friend who wants to make a movie with this theme. I want to see if you can think of a suitable idea. This answer was unreasonable, but at least Jiang Ting and the others could accept it. Anyway, compared to their boss's various ridiculous actions, this was reasonable enough. Boss, doesn't your friend have his own team? Don't worry about that. Just help me think. If you come up with something, I'll give you a bonus. You can do whatever you want in LA. Even if you want to be a star. I'll find them for you. How could this be so crude? Jiang Ting and the others weren't the only ones who thought this way. Chen Zhao thought the same too. He felt like a pimp. Boss, if it's just this, you don't have to drag us all here to boost America's GDP, right? This is serious, Chen Zhao said. It's more efficient to discuss it face to face. Boss, X's settings aren't perfect yet. Do you have a more detailed setting? What don't you know about X? X is an alien? Or superpower? Humans. I guess it's superpower, Chen Zhao said. How about resistance? It's about the same as attack. It can resist the power of a small nuclear explosion at close range. It can resist radiation too? Yes, Chen Zhao said. After all, Chen Zhao could directly endure all kinds of radiation in space. He hadn't tried the radiation damage of a nuclear explosion at close range, but it shouldn't be too far off. Then how does X recover his energy? I mean in battle. He has a rather complicated ability to recover energy. As I said before, X has a domain. He can recover by absorbing the energy in the domain, a fat man said. He can use his fist to compress the air at high speed and then punch it forward to form a small area of high-pressure air. Wasn't this the shadow of a fist? Chen Zhao shook his head. I already have this move. Boss, have you been paying attention to technology recently? Jiang Ting asked. Technology? Does it have anything to do with what we're talking about? Do you know about gravitational waves? I've heard of this term, but I don't know the specifics. To put it simply, it's similar to water waves, but gravitational waves are spatial fluctuations. The collision and fusion of celestial bodies will produce gravitational waves. However, the denser the collision of celestial bodies, the stronger the gravitational waves. Currently, the gravitational waves that humans can detect are from neutron stars and black holes. As for the slightly weaker white dwarfs, they can only be detected at close range. I still don't understand what you are trying to say. X needs about 20 minutes to release neutron star. However, the density of white dwarfs is much lower than neutron stars, so X should be able to create 2 white dwarfs at the same time. Moreover, the efficiency should be much higher than releasing neutron stars. And then? Release 2 white dwarfs at the same time and throw them out. Let them collide with each other in their flight paths. Through this collision, it can also create spatial ripples. That's a good idea. The 100,000 is yours, Chen Zhao said readily. It's a good start. Come, keep thinking. Although Jiang Ting said that the skill could be used, it still depended on the effect of actual practice. However, Chen Zhao felt that this skill had a good future. He might be able to use it in a real battle. Zhang Ting didn't know whether she should be happy or not. She'd been with Qin Zhao for 10 days. In the end, she'd gotten back all the money she'd invested in the studio. Boss, if X can compress a white dwarf with one hand, can I compress multiple white dwarfs in front of me without using my hands? Zhang Ting's words opened the door to a new world for Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao wasn't sure that he could do it. However, he could try. Or rather, if he practiced, there seemed to be a high chance that he could do it. I'll give you another 100,000. The other employees in the studio all watched with bloodshot eyes. The second boss was a ruthless person, while the big boss was a werewolf. Boss, can I say something? Just then, the cleaning auntie spoke up. Yes, auntie. Boss, do you watch Naruto? You watch? I watch. Boss, do you know about the truth-seeking jade? Well, there are quite a few people in Naruto who can use it, such as Naruto, and that. Yeah, I know. Boss said that X can create white dwarfs. It's like a truth-seeking jade. Let X circle a few people around him. When he needs it, he can throw it out. When he doesn't need it, he can keep it by his side. Whoever comes over can use it. Let's see if he can't smash them to death. Auntie, that seems like copyright infringement. Zhang Ting said with a bitter smile. Not really. The copyright isn't a problem. I think it's possible. Chen Zhao rubbed his chin. It was difficult to control, but if he was familiar with it, it seemed to be able to effectively increase his combat power. This was the upgraded version of Zhang Ting's gravitational wave. Auntie, I'll give you 50,000. Keep up the good work. Boss is such a good person. The cleaning auntie was overjoyed. She just said a few words and she actually made a lot of money. Auntie, you read comics too? My son does it. I read it when I'm free at work. Plus, our company does comics. I have to conform to our company's culture, right? Ha! Makes sense. Qin Zhao glanced at the others. Look, even our cleaning auntie can help me solve my problems. You guys are professionals, after all. Then, Qin Zhao looked at the cleaning auntie. Auntie, if you want to buy anything for your family, put it on my tab. Everyone felt pressured. Qin Zhao's words were too direct. After tasting the sweetness, the cleaning auntie also wanted to help Qin Zhao solve his problems. The security guards' eyes were all red. They hated that they hadn't read comics before. Just then, a skinny, four-eyed guy couldn't sit still anymore. He stood up and said, Boss, does X want a way to become stronger? What do you think? Theoretically, since X can compress air in his domain, can X's domain keep evolving through this training? To put it simply, it's like having X's domain undergo weight training? Huh! Qin Zhao couldn't help but think. All this time, he'd only trained himself. He'd never thought about training his domain. However, the skinny guy's words did remind Qin Zhao. Chapter 2557. Qin Zhao got what he wanted at the dinner. The skinny, four-eyed guy was a graduate who had just graduated from school. Moreover, he majored in fine arts. It wasn't easy to get a job. He had found a job like this. At the time, the skinny four-eyed guy only felt that this manga drawing job was at least compatible with his profession. When he entered the company, his colleagues told him about the boss' strange behavior. The next day, he was told that the company was going to travel abroad. He thought that it had nothing to do with him. In the end, he was dragged onto the plane too. At the time, he didn't think that the studio was rich. He just thought that the company was evil. But as soon as he arrived in Los Angeles, the boss gave him a down payment in a first-tier city before he even spent the money. He was just thinking about it and trying his luck. He didn't think that the boss would really give him a bonus. The others were startled by this. This guy can't be serious, right? Zhang Ting covered her head. She was calculating how much money Qin Zhao had spent on the studio recently. If converted to RMB, it would probably be 7 or 8 million. You guys continue to eat and drink to your heart's content. I won't accompany you guys. I don't want you guys to feel uncomfortable with me here. Zhang Ting, make a list of what they want to do tonight so that I can make arrangements. Got it, boss. After returning home, Chen Zhao and Fei Lai cuddled for an hour. When Fei Lai fell asleep, Chen Zhao sneaked into the river map. First was a white dwarf. Compared to a neutron star, creating a white dwarf wasn't a problem at all. Chen Zhao didn't even need a second to create a white dwarf. To put it simply, the higher the density, the more power he needed. For example, Chen Zhao only needed a second to create 1,000 times the density of air. But he needed 2 seconds to go from 1,000 to 1,500 times. So on and so forth, time and power were the requirements of a linear ladder. According to the definition of astrophysics, a star with more than a ton per square centimeter could be called a white dwarf. A neutron star, on the other hand, had a density of more than 100 million tons per square centimeter. One could imagine how big the difference was. Of course, the white dwarfs that Chen Zhao could create in a short amount of time had a density that was much higher than the lower limit of a white dwarf, but also much lower than the density of a neutron star. In fact, even if Chen Zhao used all his strength, he wouldn't be able to create an object with a true neutron density. For example, Chen Zhao could create an air balloon with 1,000 times the density of a white dwarf in 1 second. To create a balloon with 2,000 times the density of a white dwarf, he would need several times the time and energy. To achieve 3,000 times the density, he would need several times the time and energy. To achieve 4,000 times the density, he would need even more time and energy. Chen Zhao's current limit should be around 6,000 times the density of a white dwarf, but he would need almost an hour. There was no battle that could make the enemy wait an hour for Chen Zhao to build up his power. Chen Zhao tried to create 2 white dwarfs with 1,000 times the density with both hands. It wasn't difficult either. It was no different from creating a single white dwarf. The power produced by the collision of 2 white dwarfs that were 1,000 times the size of a white dwarf was also considerable. It was already 1/3 of the power of a neutron star. He had to admit that Zhang Ting's brain was really useful. After all, he relied on his imagination for a living. This move, which she called gravitational wave, had indeed brought a huge breakthrough to Chen Zhao's actual combat. It even allowed Chen Zhao to go from close combat to true long-range combat. While retaining his close combat ability, he now had a long-range attack method. However, if he wanted to go one step further and create a few truth-seeking jades to float around him like the cleaner said, it would be very difficult. Without the control of his hands, he would have to compress them with the power of the pocket dimension and control the white dwarf to fly freely. He couldn't do it at all. Chen Zhao fell into deep thought. It seemed that cultivating the pocket dimension was necessary. The skinny, four-eyed guy's training was very simple. He just had to carry weights. In fact, the method he provided was too simple and one-sided. Chen Zhao needed more training. Absolute control of the pocket dimension had to reach the same level as the physical body, or at least close to it. Although the pocket dimension was also an extension of the body, it was more like uncontrollable muscle tissue. It was like the extra fat on one's belly. One could control the rise and fall of one's belly, but one couldn't make it become like one's limbs. If Chen Zhao wanted to achieve the effect of his plan, he had to make the pocket dimension stronger. It was definitely impossible to move it as freely as one's limbs. But it wasn't completely impossible to get close to it. After all, Chen Zhao had a lot of time. The normal method of compressing large amounts of air in the pocket dimension to increase the density of the air in the pocket dimension would be the burden on Chen Zhao's body. How could he train the pocket dimension? He had no other choice but to use it. If he wanted to improve through battles, it was obviously the best choice. But how many battles could he fight against Chen Zhao? So, he might as well practice alone and use it again and again. Chen Zhao sat down and looked at the internal alchemy left by Old Turtle. Back then, Old Turtle had left because of his breakthrough. His internal alchemy had also turned into an internal alchemy condensed from immortal power. Therefore, it was much heavier than a sphere of the same volume. This was the difference in density. It was heavier than the densest substance in the world. Qin Zhao tried to lift the immortal power inner core. Of course, he didn't use his hands or any part of his body. He used the power of his realm. But this internal alchemy was too heavy. Think about it. A 10 by 10 by 10 cube of gold weighed 19,320 tons. The density of the internal alchemy was much higher than gold. The diameter of the sphere was almost 40 meters. This internal alchemy weighed 1,000,000 tons. Chen Zhao tried to slowly lift the internal alchemy. He could lift it, but it was far from being able to move it freely. It also couldn't be used as an attack in battle. As for condensing a small ball weighing tens of millions of tons with the help of the small world, Chen Zhao was far from being able to do so. It was impossible. Only now did Chen Zhao realize that he hadn't used and developed the pocket dimension enough. It could even be said that ever since Chen Zhao had comprehended the Shangqing realm, he hadn't actively developed or researched the pocket dimension, let alone trained it. The pocket dimension had expanded from its original diameter of 50 meters to 1,000 meters. But the actual increase was only in the range. It only increased his immortal power storage, recovery speed, and sensing range. His actual combat power didn't increase at all. Chapter 2558. Qin Zhao realized that his development of the pocket dimension was still very low. No, he hadn't developed it at all. The pocket dimension was filled with meridians that only Chen Zhao could see. They were the meridians of the world, heavenly patterns. Qin Zhao had discussed this with Old Turtle before. As someone with experience, Old Turtle felt that heavenly patterns were the meridians of the world. These meridians were like human meridians. The spiritual qi of the world flowed in these meridians. Chen Zhao suddenly thought of a question. Heavenly patterns were the meridians of the world. Could heavenly patterns be strengthened like one's meridians? But how could one strengthen heavenly patterns? Qin Zhao didn't have a clue right now. Heavenly patterns weren't something tangible. They couldn't be touched or sensed. Only one could see the heavenly patterns that formed one's pocket dimension. Using the pocket dimension as a human's body. Now, heavenly patterns were one's meridians. In the past, one's body was in direct contact with the meridians of the world to breathe and absorb the spiritual qi of the world. Now, it was in contact with heavenly patterns, so the range of contact with the world was wider. From this angle, it could be confirmed that heavenly patterns were like human meridians. So, how could one strengthen their meridians? Evolving one's own body was one way. Tempering in the process of cultivation was also a way. Heavenly patterns couldn't be destroyed. All attacks were ineffective. It was the same logic as how no matter how powerful a person was, they couldn't destroy someone else's territory. Being unbreakable often meant that it couldn't be changed. If it couldn't be changed, then the strengthening that Qin Zhao wanted couldn't be discussed. Qin Zhao suddenly wondered if he could use Nirvana's flame to temper heavenly patterns. Nirvana's flame probably couldn't either. Just then, Qin Zhao thought of something. The handsome young man had once taught him a spell. He could use his own pocket dimension to swallow an unstable pocket dimension. When he fought Kong Mosa, Qin Zhao had used this move to take away Kong Mosa's pocket dimension. If there was someone among the people he knew who could change a pocket dimension, Qin Zhao believed that it had to be the handsome young man. Qin Zhao recalled the content of the spell. In a way, it was a spell that could change a pocket dimension. However, it could only take away an unstable pocket dimension like Kong Mosa's. Kong Mosa's pocket dimension was attached to his demon army. The spell that the handsome boy gave him was not complicated at all. However, it would be too difficult for Qin Zhao to decipher the contents of the heavenly pattern. Moreover, it was even more difficult to deduce a suitable circulation method for oneself from this content. Qin Zhao wrote down the content of the spell and started analyzing it paragraph by sentence. Hello, handsome boy. What is it? Remember when you gave me a spell that could devour other people's domains? I remember. Why? Is there something wrong with the spell? No, I've made some changes recently. I want you to take a look and see if there are any problems. The handsome young man received Qin Zhao's message. With just a glance, he had already understood the summary of the content. Tell me why you changed your magic. My goal was to strengthen and train my domain, but then I discovered a problem. I couldn't make any fundamental changes to my domain, so my training became meaningless. In fact, this principle was the same as the gym. If a person went to the gym, his original intention was to strengthen his body. But if his training in the gym only made him more familiar with the equipment, his body wouldn't change at all. His body did not change at all, so this training method was definitely wrong. What do you think of my changes? It's a big problem. A big problem? What's the problem? Think about it yourself. I'll only help you identify if there's a problem, the handsome young man said. Why? Tell me about it. You're not weak. In hell, you're a lord, so you should think about it yourself. It's good for you too. Sigh. I really don't like exchanging thoughts with masters like you. Every time I get to the point, I'll think about it myself. Chen Zhao sighed. You should learn to think. I can think, but it's not my strong suit. Then make it your strong suit. Okay. Let's talk about something pleasant. Do you have anything pleasant to share with me? I killed a demon recently and stole a lot of gold from him. Oh, he also raised many unusual gods. Do you want some? I'll bring some for you next time I go to hell. Oh? Unusual gods? In hell, only Beelzebub has a lot of them. Also, Samuel seems to have some too. Do you have a mother? Yes, the handsome young man said. If the mother gives birth to a special egg next time, pick the smallest 10 and give them to me. Why? Don't tell me you're too embarrassed to ask for the big ones? Anyway, the mother is good at giving birth. It doesn't matter if you have a few big ones. The handsome young man shook his head. When the mother breeds the special egg, it won't provide too much nutrients to the mother's egg, so the small eggs that are born are very likely to be the mother's egg. If you want to raise a new mother, you can only find it from the small eggs. By the way, the last time I went there, I saw a lot of eggs that haven't hatched yet. The mother probably just laid eggs. I'll get the people in charge of cloning and breeding to pick up those small eggs. I'll send them to you in a few days. Okay. Also, I bought a studio. So they helped me think of a few of my skills. Oh, that's a good idea. Why don't you think I'm being opportunistic when other people help me think? I asked you questions, but you want me to think for myself? That's what you want to say when you talk to me about the people you bought, right? What do you mean by bought? They're just working for me. Don't avoid the question. They're not in the same field as you. It's very common for you to broaden your horizons and gain enlightenment from people in other fields. They can't give you guidance, but more possibilities. As for me, if I were to tell you, I would only tell you one path and you'd lose more possibilities. Qin Zhao sounded disdainful, but he remembered the handsome young man's words. But your studio also gave me an interesting enlightenment, the handsome young man said. Help me thank them. 9 Heavens Divine King. Chapter 2559. It's too insincere to let others thank you for me. Are you sure you want me to thank them personally? I'll drag their souls to hell. I'm just kidding. I'm happy to help you. Qin Zhao walked out and lay in the yard, gazing at the starry sky. Do you know that star? No. What's so special about it? In China, that star is called Chang'e or Tai Bai. In the West, it's called Venus or Morning Star. It's also a star that represents you. Represents me? Yes, Morning Star Lucifer, the brightest angel. I still prefer another name, Satan. Then do you like little Sa or handsome? Why does it have to be a little? It makes it seem like we're close. Then should I call you Little Qin Zhao? No. In Chinese, you can't add a little in front of your name because it lowers your seniority. If you're my senior, you can call me that. You have to understand the difference between a nickname and a name. I don't understand. You can give me a little, but why can't I? If you want to give me a little, you have to have a nickname first and then a little. That'll make it seem more intimate. Nickname? You're human. Can I call you little man? Why do I feel like you're scolding me? Whatever. I'll go ask some Asians later. The handsome guy paused and asked, Oh, what experience do you have with raising and educating children? Qin Zhao stared at him as if he'd seen a ghost. Are you seriously discussing this with me? Yes. You have a child? Who did you have it with? Did you forget? The handsome guy said. When we first met, we made a deal. I took a perfect angelic crystal from you. You're saying that angelic crystals can give birth to angels? You can't, but I can. The handsome guy said emotionlessly. Let your child avoid all the dangers you can think of and give him absolute protection. Qin Zhao started talking about parenting with the handsome guy. However, the child still needs to establish his own social network. Regardless of his identity, he needs to come into contact with other demons, either as an enemy or a friend. That's exactly what I'm worried about. If I let her acknowledge hell, then one day she'll hate her own identity. But if I let her acknowledge her own identity, then one day she'll hate hell and even escape from it. That's easy, Qin Zhao said. Build your own school and instill your ideas into your children through education. But you should think about what you want to instill in your children first. The handsome boy thought for a moment and said, I have no experience in this area. I have no experience either. Qin Zhao shrugged helplessly. But there are professionals in the human world. You're not asking me to send a few teachers to hell, are you? This kind of thing goes against my principles. No, I just need to conform to my child's ideals. In other words, you only want educational content, right? Yes. Zhang Ting stood on the balcony, enjoying the holiday breeze and the faint smell of the sea. Hotel suites rarely came with balconies. One had to admit that the location of this hotel was too good. It could watch the wind and the sea. In front was the sea, and behind was the downtown area. It could be quiet or moving. There was also a beach that belonged to the hotel, which directly increased the comfort of the hotel. Just then, Zhang Ting's phone rang. Zhang Ting, my yacht is already parked at the entrance of the hotel. You can come down when you're ready. Everyone is going out to play today. If you're ready, come to the pier in front of the hotel. Got it, boss. After hanging up, Zhang Ting said to her assistant, Go tell the others that the boss is waiting for us at the pier. Don't let him wait too long and leave a bad impression. Oh, got it. The assistant skipped out. The ratio of men to women in the studio was pretty balanced, but some of the girls in the studio were still in bed when they received the notice. This made them very smart. On one hand, they wanted to show off their beauty in front of the boss. On the other hand, time was too tight, so they didn't want to be late. Chen Zhao was dressed rather casually today. He was wearing colorful casual clothes and a sun hat. A few girls stared at Chen Zhao with shining eyes as if they wanted to catch a rich husband. Boss, sorry for making you wait so long. It's fine, Chen Zhao said casually. We're all out to play. Don't do office stuff. Let's go on the yacht. Zhang Ting nodded. Her impression of Chen Zhao improved. She didn't really like Chen Zhao's nouveau riche style, but Chen Zhao's personality wasn't bad. However, Chen Zhao wasn't a bad person. He never put on airs in front of them. Boss, where's the yacht you prepared? This one. Chen Zhao pointed behind him at the hydra docked behind him. This one? Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. The yacht was too big. Boss, it's too big. We don't even have 20 people. We don't need such a big yacht, right? It costs 200,000 to 300,000 a day to rent, right? No, it's mine, Chen Zhao said casually. Let's go. Everyone had a new understanding of Chen Zhao's wealth. After boarding the ship, everyone was like Granny Lu entering the Grand View Garden. Even Zhang Ting, who was from an upper-class family, was shocked by how luxurious the yacht was. The yacht itself was full of technology. It also had all the functions. As long as they had all the resources, even celebrating the new year on the yacht would be exciting. Qin Zhao pulled over a folding chair and leaned against the swimming pool on the top floor. By then, the guys and girls in the studio had all changed. Some of the more conservative ones still wore traditional swimsuits. 3 girls were bolder and wore bikinis, which were very eye-catching. Jiang Ting also changed into a bikini, but her upper body was still covered with a large white shirt. Jiang Ting brought Chen Zhao a glass of wine. Not bad. Did you make it? When I was studying in England, I worked part-time as a bartender. What did you study when you were studying abroad? Astrophysics is looking at outer space with a telescope every day. This is way too different from the industry you're working in now, right? What I learned in the past was for my family. What I'm doing now is my own hobby. Jiang Ting said. What about you? I studied medicine. You quit medicine and went into business? No, I'm also a medical professor at UCLA. Chapter 2560. Jiang Ting was completely stunned. This man who looked like a nouveau riche was actually a university professor? Just then, 2 bold girls walked over. Boss, come and play with us. With that, they pulled Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao pursed his lips. Why did that sound so awkward? However, the 2 girls weren't embarrassed because they said something wrong at all. They kept pushing Chen Zhao into the pool. Chen Zhao didn't want to spoil everyone's fun, so he cooperated. After half an hour, Chen Zhao said that he was tired again and wanted to rest. Jiang Ting sat cross-legged on the cushion. Seeing Chen Zhao walk over, she pinched her lower lip and whistled. Your body is really good. I think you're really a good stock. You're rich, educated, and have such a great body. 80 points. Why only 80? Shouldn't it be 100 points? You're not handsome enough. Chen Zhao's mouth twitched. You don't like being intimate with strangers, right? Jiang Ting asked. Jiang Ting could tell that Chen Zhao was in agreement with her employees. It's okay. Chen Zhao didn't admit it directly. How about it? Think about the girls in our studio. They're all good. Their education, personality, and looks are all good. I'm married. I'm the father of 2 children. Really? What a pity. Jiang Ting wasn't too surprised. In fact, she noticed that there were children's toys around Chen Zhao a few times during their video calls. She'd already guessed it. Now, it was just to confirm her guess. Master, a call for you. Miss Alex is calling. Connect to my Bluetooth headset. Chen Zhao put it on. Alex, what's up? My team and the bank have already agreed, Alex said. The bank will buy it at $32.75 per gram, which is 21% of the current market price. It's done so quickly? Chen Zhao was surprised. He thought that this negotiation would be a long battle. A month or 2 would be considered a short one. It wouldn't be surprising if it lasted half a year or even a year. The international gold price has been rising recently. If it doesn't fall, the longer it drags on, the higher the price they'll have to pay. Maybe it will fall tomorrow. About 5 days ago, a mudslide occurred in a Brazilian gold mine, causing hundreds of people to be buried. Now, the government has temporarily blocked the situation and is demanding $8 billion in compensation and fines from the mining company. That gold mine is currently ranked 4th in the world, and its annual production accounts for 9% of the world's total production. So before this matter is resolved, the price of gold will not fall. In other words, I got lucky, right? You could say that. Alex also laughed. Based on the 3% commission, this mission would bring her close to $300 million in income. This price is much higher than I thought. I thought it would be around 60% of the market price at most. It's very simple. I've also contacted other banks. This country doesn't have anything else, but there are plenty of banks. Moreover, it's not just the banks who can afford this batch of gold. There are also many rich people who can afford this batch of gold. 83% of the market price is already a huge profit for them. If it weren't for the fact that you don't have a clear proof of production, people would fight to buy it even if it's 105% of the market price. Alex didn't ask too much about the origin of the gold. Since Qin Zhao didn't tell her clearly, it was probably the kind of gold that came from illegal sources. However, she knew what her duty was. When do we sign the contract? Tomorrow morning, if possible. As long as it's morning? Of course. They really want to communicate with you, but I know you won't be interested. I'll leave this to you, Qin Zhao said. Then we'll talk tomorrow. After hanging up, Zhang Ting glanced at Qin Zhao. Boss, if you're busy, you can go back now. No, but I have a contract to sign tomorrow morning, so you guys can do whatever you want in the morning. I'll arrange other projects for you in the afternoon. Boss, we have our hands and feet. We don't need you to accompany us all the time. In my first month in LA, I encountered 2 shootings. One of them was when I was held hostage by the gunman. Qin Zhao said. Since I brought you guys out, I have to ensure your safety. Boss, you're so rich. I think we'll be in more danger if you stay with us. After all, if the kidnappers want to kidnap you, they might hurt us accidentally. That's why I need to find a few scapegoats. Qin Zhao said, smiling. Just then, a few guys ran over. Boss, I see that you have diving equipment. Can we go in? The water here is deep and you don't have a diving license, so you can't go in here. Also, without a professional coach, you can't go in alone. When the boat reaches the shallow water, I'll bring you in. Boss, do you have a diving license? I have an athlete diving license. When they reached the shallow water, Qin Zhao brought 4 guys and 1 girl into the water. In fact, this area was near Qin Zhao's moon coast. It was also Qin Zhao's private property. These otakus had never dived before. At first, they were very excited. But when they really went into the water, they were afraid and didn't dare to go in. Nevertheless, under Qin Zhao's guidance, they still went in. Zhang Ting had been worried that Qin Zhao didn't prepare well since he brought them overseas in such a hurry. Only now did she realize that her worries were unnecessary. From the moment they got on the plane, they received the best trip. When they reached the shore, each of them held a giant clam of various sizes. This one's too small. Throw it back into the sea. Qin Zhao glanced at the giant clam in the skinny 4-eyed guy's hand. Such a small giant clam could only be considered a larva. They couldn't be eaten even if they were fished up. It was a complete waste. We'll eat this for lunch. Also, who knows how to cook? There are still ingredients in the kitchen. Go make a few national dishes. I haven't eaten national dishes in a long time. I'll go. Which local flavor do you like? Zhang Ting asked. Anything is fine, but I like Sichuan and Hunan. After lunch, Qin Zhao thought that they would still make a fuss. In the end, they all seemed to be drained of energy. They just sit in front of the computer every day and don't exercise much. Zhang Ting said, speechless. Now that they're suddenly active, they're all shriveled up. This is so embarrassing. Then after we return, Qin Zhao said, get each of them a gym card so that they don't forget to exercise outside of work. 9 Heavens Divine King. Chapter 2561. Boss, you're thinking too much. Even if you add 100,000 to their fitness cards, they won't enter the gym for a minute. Then build a fitness area in the studio. They have to work out for an hour every day. Boss, there's a park a few hundred meters downstairs. There's no need to build a fitness area. Who's going to supervise the park? Just build a fitness area. Whoever slacks off will get their bonus deducted. Zhang Ting didn't know if Qin Zhao was acting like a nouveau riche again, or if he was just having a bad taste. Boss, are you serious? Of course. Next time I'll take you to Africa. It'll be so boring if you lie down halfway. Zhang Ting decided to change the topic. If they continued, she was afraid that Qin Zhao would ask her subordinates to run a marathon before coming to work. Boss, how did you train your body? To be honest, Zhang Ting's first impression was that Qin Zhao was a nouveau riche. However, his well-toned muscles were definitely much prettier than the handsome men she'd seen on TV. Yes, in her eyes, he was beautiful. His body wasn't like those bodybuilders with explosive muscles. Using the current popular saying, it was wearing clothes to look skinny, taking off clothes to reveal flesh. Therefore, she really couldn't define Qin Zhao's temperament. Simply put, keeping your mouth shut and moving your legs is more effective than any diet pill. But you ate a lot for lunch too. Eat as much as you can, Qin Zhao said. For people like me who don't have excess fat, I get hungry more easily than fat people, so I need lots of nutrition. You'll get beaten up if you say that. Because everyone had gone to lie down, Qin Zhao had the boat dock. Going out to sea looked pretty classy. In fact, it was very tiring. Qin Zhao couldn't drag them up and make them jump around for a few more hours. However, as soon as they reached the shore, they seemed to recover. Boss, what's next? My original plan was to return in the evening. After dinner, you guys can go back to the hotel to rest. It's still early now. What do you want to do? I want to go to Beverly Hills. I want to go to Hollywood. I want to go to San Fernando Valley. All the male colleagues looked at this colleague. If you want to go to San Fernando Valley, go by yourself. I'm a big boss. It'll be embarrassing if I take you there, Qin Zhao said, annoyed. Who wants to go to Hollywood? I'll take you there. Actually, everyone was interested in Hollywood. In the end, everyone followed Qin Zhao to Hollywood. For the vast majority of young people in this world, Hollywood was the land of dreams. Even amateurs like them could not help but come to pay a visit. Don't think that pilgrimage is too much. Since the 1960s, Hollywood had been the benchmark and holy land of the film industry. After abandoning the European tradition and literature, and completely industrializing and commercializing movies, Hollywood also burst out with unprecedented charm and appeal. For example, those European directors were all denouncing Hollywood for ruining the art of film. In the end, when they received the invitations, all of them felt really good. It was an indisputable fact that no matter which country or region's film industry developed, they would have to crown themselves as a certain place's Hollywood to flaunt their standards. For example, domestic actors all risked their lives to come to Hollywood for gold plating. What was it for? When the domestic box office reached $70 billion a year, they were proud and felt that the film industry was close to Hollywood. However, they did not know that Hollywood's $12 billion a year was only in China. The worldwide box office was $100 billion. The box office could not fully reflect the power of Hollywood's film industry. The $400 billion weekly box office was the scariest. It was just like how Disney produced a fairy tale every year and kept reshooting it. What was it for? Most of the time, the box office suffered losses. Was Disney stupid? It was to boost the sales of their peripherals. A complete film industry chain was the foundation of Hollywood's power. Domestic movies were still in the early stages. The box office looked good, but there was no complete industry chain. It was just like the Japanese animation industry chain. When China could complete an industry chain, it would be truly powerful. The technology could be learned from others. The special effects companies in China were not bad. Many Hollywood special effects were outsourced to local special effects companies. However, the industry had to be built bit by bit. This was a vicious cycle. Because the industry chain was not complete, it was too risky to just rely on the box office to recover the cost. Because of the high risk, the investors did not dare to invest too much money. Without enough money, the special effects were not good enough. The huge box office earnings of domestically produced movies every year were actually supported by a few movies with a conscience. Without these movies, the annual box office would be halved. However, a country's film industry could not only be supported by a few movies with conscience. There were many places in Hollywood that paid to visit. This was actually one of Hollywood's industries. The income was not high. In fact, tens of millions of tourists visited Hollywood every year. How could he say that he had been to Los Angeles if he had never been to Hollywood? Boss, do you have connections in Hollywood? Zhang Ting asked. What? Are you planning to enter Hollywood? Qin Zhao teased. If Xiao Qi and the others want to have fun, they can be extras too. They can brag that they filmed Hollywood blockbusters when they come back. Chen Zhao couldn't help but laugh. I'll ask if my friend needs an extra. Boss, you really have connections? I know 2 or 3 people, Chen Zhao said casually. Steven, what are you doing now? Fuck you shoal. How long have you been missing? I went to your house last week, but you weren't home. I was chased out of Mirror Lake by Princess. If you didn't want the wine in my cellar, would you have been chased by Princess? Chen Zhao knew Steven too well. He had only been chased by Princess when Fei Lai was not home. There was only Portia and the kids at home. Then, he would steal the wine from the cellar. That was why he was chased by Princess. Humph, I hate you now. If you don't give me a box of wine, we're done. Are you on set now? Yes. Why? I have a few friends who want to have fun. Do you have any extras? 1 or 2 scenes? Chapter 2562. Okay, come with me. Boss, you really have a way? Yeah. Didn't I tell you last time that X's settings and skills were all for a friend of mine? Okay. Zhang Ting still didn't believe Chen Zhao. If it was a proper film company, how could they not have their own creative team? Was Chen Zhao's friend the type from Sanctuary Film Company? The more Zhang Ting thought about it, the more likely it seemed. Sanctuary Film Company was probably unfamiliar to most people. But most people had been harmed by the company. Sanctuary Film Company was the most famous copycat film company in the world. They would copy whatever other people filmed. And the most amazing thing was that they still maintained a very special record. That was, none of the movies they had shot had any losses. Chen Zhao brought them to a film set. Chen Zhao saw someone familiar outside. Famtis. Hi, Chen. Famtis glanced at the people behind Chen Zhao. Who are they? My friends. I brought them here to ask your boss for a few extra roles. Okay. Famtis waved at the 2 security guards in the distance. Chen Zhao and the others successfully entered the set. Before he entered the interior, he could already hear the roar. Zhang Ting and the people behind her couldn't help but shiver. She didn't hear it too clearly just now. But she heard at least 3 F's in that sentence. Chen Zhao chuckled and walked into the interior. He saw Steven spitting saliva at an actress. The actress was trembling and didn't dare to say anything. She looked like she was about to cry from Steven's spitting. When Zhang Ting and the others followed Chen Zhao in, they realized that this wasn't a normal crew. After all, the one who was scolding him was none other than Steven. Chen Zhao walked to the camera and greeted the assistant director. Then he pulled Steven's chair over and sat down. He crossed his legs and watched Steven spitting. Chen Zhao knew more than half of the people in Steven's crew. To Chen Zhao, this was no different from going home. Yu Wenhui walked over with a cup of coffee. Thank you. Chen Zhao took the coffee. That's my coffee. Why did you give it to this shoal? Steven yelled when he realized that his coffee was in Chen Zhao's hand. Yu Wenhui had long been used to her boss. She just shrugged lightly. Boss, you should find the culprit who took your coffee instead of getting angry at a weak assistant like me. Who? Chen Zhao blew at the coffee in his hand. It's already afternoon, and you still want to drink coffee to refresh yourself. Steven, are you tired? Do you want me to prescribe some medicine for you? Fuck off, get out of my way. This is my place. Zhang Ting was surprised to see the interaction between Chen Zhao and Steven. Looking at how familiar they were with each other, it didn't seem as simple as just knowing each other. These are your friends? Yes, I'll be out in the country for a week. Do you need any extras? If not, I'll ask James. James's new film has been shot for a long time. It's now in post-production, so he won't have any chance to act as an extra in a short time. Fine. How many extras do you need? Chen Zhao asked. Doesn't matter. It's just changing the original group members. Steven didn't have any psychological counseling when it came to this. Chen Zhao pouted. I feel like I'm a bad guy. Wait for a while, I still have a few scenes that require an extra. Just find a place to sit, Chen Zhao said to Zhang Ting. Zhang Ting sat beside Chen Zhao and glanced at Stephen in front of her. Stephen was directing at the moment and didn't have time to care. Boss, are you close to Director Stephen? Not really. Wasn't he lying through his teeth? If this was not close, then there really wasn't anyone close. Boss, the X setting you mentioned is for Director Stephen? No. All the employees in the studio were very excited. After all, it was the great Director Stephen. If there was a big boss in the film industry, it would definitely be Stephen. Although Chen Zhao was here. When Stephen was immersed in filming, he displayed absolute professionalism. He didn't have any distractions. Every scene had to be perfect. The actress who was almost scolded to tears by Stephen finally gave a satisfactory performance after he threatened to replace her. The actress who was almost scolded to tears by Stephen finally gave a satisfactory performance after Stephen threatened to replace her. There were only 4 short scenes, but Chen Zhao still waited for an hour and a half. They even received some simple makeup from the production team's makeup artist. Then Stephen came over to talk to them about the scene. Usually, Stephen wouldn't talk to a group. It was only because they were Chen Zhao's friends. So he still showed enough friendliness. But Stephen didn't know that when they came in, his image had already been completely destroyed by his vulgarities. Their scene was very simple. The supporting actress entered the restaurant and fought with the main character. Zhang Ting's group would play the restaurant's customers. They were the ones who were affected. It would have been fine if there were only 1 or 2 Asian faces, but they were all Asian, so Stephen had no choice but to change the script slightly. But this was only a small matter. He just had to change the scene to a Chinese restaurant on Chinatown. Zhang Ting filmed 2 scenes. She was the owner of the restaurant, so she had 1 more scene and a few more scenes than the others. Everyone was still in a state of excitement when they finished filming. Even Zhang Ting, who was usually calm and collected, could not hide her excitement. How was it? Did you enjoy it? Yes. Zhang Ting gradually calmed down. But she was still amazed by Chen Zhao's power. This wasn't something a nouveau riche could do. After bidding farewell to Stephen, Chen Zhao left with his group. Actually, this opportunity wouldn't bring any change to their lives. At most, it was just something they could brag about in the future. Boss, you're serious about making Chinese comics, right? What do you mean serious? Have I ever not been serious before? Chen Zhao felt a little guilty when Zhang Ting asked this. Because his original intention wasn't to make Chinese comics. At the moment, Chen Zhao was also reflecting. When had he exposed his impure intentions? No matter how he thought about it, he couldn't think of anything wrong. Boss, if you want to make Chinese comics, you can't spend money like this. You have to invest it into the promotion and production of your works. I'm spending a lot of money, Chen Zhao said, embarrassed. Why are you suddenly so serious? Let's change the topic. Chapter 2563. You should know what it means. Zhang Ting glanced at Chen Zhao. Don't make your employees your enemies. Chen Zhao nodded. Looking at Zhang Ting, Chen Zhao sighed. I think you're more suitable to be a life coach. When Chen Zhao returned home, he passed by a construction site. It was Mountain Town, near the center. It was about 1,000 square meters. Chen Zhao stopped because he saw Clive's car. When he entered, he saw Clive talking to the person in charge of the site with a construction cap. Hi, Clive. Mr. Chen, how come you're here? Is this the new location for your kindergarten? Yes, I should have sent you a message already. Didn't you see it? I wasn't here before, so I probably didn't receive the message. Chen Zhao looked around. Is it going well? Nothing bad, Clive said. It'll be officially completed by the beginning of February. The new students can start school in the middle of February. Okay, Clive said. Since it's for kids, we have to pay attention to the construction quality. We can't have any problems here. America was a country full of tolerance and protection for underage children. Anything that involved underage children would become a big problem. Plus, Qin Zhao's own child was going to school. Of course, he had to make everything perfect. Clive nodded. Then Qin Zhao said, "Tell me if you don't have enough money." "Got it." Qin Zhao didn't stay long and left in a hurry. When he returned home, he realized that there was a little girl. "Darling, how come there's a little angel here?" Qin Zhao asked Fei Lai. "That's a classmate Irij brought back. She's staying here tonight." "Did you tell her parents?" Qin Zhao asked. "Here, if you bring a girl home without the other party's guardian's knowledge, you'll be in trouble. Even if they had good intentions, they could still be accused of abducting a minor." "I talked to her mother," Fei Lai said. She agreed. The girl played with Irij and a few other children. They seemed to be very close. However, she was only 6 or 7, so she was still a bit scared when she saw Qin Zhao. The boys were soaking in the water with little Jerlin. Speaking of little Jerlin's swimming talent, no one could compare to her. Even Kilo, who was the oldest among the boys, could not outrun Jerlin if he did not use his magic. Little Jerlin was not even a year and a half old, and she was no bigger than a child her age. But she swam very fast in the water. Jerlin seemed to have a natural affinity for water. Most adults might not even be able to swim faster than little Jerlin. This was Qin Zhao's most enjoyable moment. Just then, 2 brownish-yellow figures pounced on Qin Zhao. Simba and Nana were no longer the little ones they used to be. They had grown quite a bit, and were probably about the size of 2 half-grown little yellow dogs. Briar and Bramble hugged Qin Zhao's legs. They had grown quite a bit too. But compared to their mother, they were still tiny. Briar and Bramble also wanted to climb onto him, but they couldn't. In fact, they are very good at climbing trees. In the whole family, they were the most capable. It was just that he could go up but not down. He climbed to the top of the tree several times but did not dare to come down. Qin Zhao had to go up and catch them. At night, Qin Zhao entered the river map again. Qin Zhao kept the handsome boy's words in mind. Qin Zhao looked at the spell the handsome boy had given him, and then compared it with what he had modified. But after a while, another thought popped into his head. Was everything he was doing just to change things? Qin Zhao could vaguely feel that something was about to catch that point. But it was hard to find and grasp. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. Qin Zhao still did not make any progress. Qin Zhao's brain was a bit slow. He had never sat on the ground for so long. It was not just to change, but to become more perfect. Qin Zhao suddenly thought of a question. What was the future of the small world? To make the small world bigger? Vaster? Was this the future of the small world? If it was just to expand the small world, then all this would be meaningless. Take Bifla for example. As a powerhouse who had just entered the Shangqing realm, he was many times weaker than his own little world. But was there a difference between the two? Qin Zhao sat there for another month. Qin Zhao kept thinking along this train of thought. The idea in his head became clearer and clearer. Qin Zhao looked at the cultivation method he'd modified. Qin Zhao finally understood what the handsome boy meant. But now, he also felt the difference. With just one glance, the handsome young man knew what his problem was. But Qin Zhao actually used more than a month to think it through. Qin Zhao started to modify the cultivation method according to his own train of thought. Qin Zhao was not sure if his train of thought was correct. But he felt that he had found the direction. "Old Zhang, how about coming to Los Angeles?" "What? Communication. Communication? I might have found a path, but I need more communication." "Okay, I'll come." After hanging up, Qin Zhao called Bifla. "Bifla." Then it was Blood Mary 23. Blood Mary. Bifla and 23rd Blood Mary also agreed to come to Los Angeles. On the other hand, Qin Zhao had spent 2 nights in the river map. He had spent a few months there. There was no progress at all in his original cultivation plan. All his energy was spent on establishing theories. Since it was still early, Qin Zhao ran to the sky to cultivate his yin-yang inner elixir. He didn't return to the manor until 5 in the morning. The lesser demons were already busy at this time. After 8 in the morning, the family woke up one by one. Portia arrived at breakfast time. Then, those who should go to work went to school. Chen Zhao told Portia to stay at home. He had to sign a contract. When Chen Zhao arrived at the signing site, Alex brought him in. The signing site wasn't a public place. Yamila was there too. She was the bank's representative. After a simple greeting, they started signing the contract. Of course, they only started after the lawyers of both sides reviewed the contract. Both sides had large and professional lawyers. Even though they had agreed beforehand, they still had to examine the contract word by word on the spot. Finally, a lawyer would explain every clause of the contract to Chen Zhao. Chapter 2564. The signing process went smoothly. No one asked Chen Zhao about the origin of the gold. Both parties seemed to have silently acknowledged the origin of the gold. "Chen, let's go sit in the next room," Amira said. Chen Zhao nodded and went to the next room with Amira. "Congratulations, you've earned a lot of money again." "Amira, I'm selling at a loss." Amira didn't retort. Indeed, the bank she represented didn't lose money this time. But Chen Zhao's profit was real. Moreover, the gold that Chen Zhao had sold probably wasn't bought with his own money. "Chen, do you have any more gold?" "No. I sold all 300 tons to your bank. I don't have any more." "Really?" Amira stared at Chen Zhao. "I still have some scattered gold, but it's definitely not enough to satisfy your appetite," Chen Zhao said calmly. He'd already sold 300 tons. Chen Zhao wouldn't admit that he still had more. The bank's purchase price was higher than Aquilati Gisli's. In reality, the two transactions were completely different. The bank called it a mortgage loan. It could only do this once. Chen Zhao's sale to Aquilati Gisli was the real deal. As long as Chen Zhao still had stock, he could sell it to anyone. Of course, it was for long-term economic benefits. Chen Zhao couldn't sell so much in a short time, even if he had a good relationship with Amira. Fine. Amira didn't continue on this topic. Actually, she was also testing him. She couldn't be sure if Chen Zhao still had gold. But even if Chen Zhao had gold, at this time, temporarily stopping trading and keeping the gold in hand was also the wisest choice. When the amount of gold reached a certain level, it wouldn't just be gold anymore. At that time, gold could be used as a bomb to shake the market. Amira wasn't asking as a representative of the bank. Instead, she was asking as a representative of her family. Financial giants like her and her family all knew the importance of gold. So, she and her family wanted to buy some gold to keep as a trump card. It wasn't that there wasn't gold on the market, but it was basically scattered gold. There were also a few people who had large amounts of gold. But if Chen Zhao wanted to buy gold from them, therefore, what was needed was not 83% of the market price. Basically, the other party would ask for 105% of the market price, or even 110% or 120%. Therefore, there weren't many people like Chen Zhao who had gold at a low price anymore. No, he was the only one. "Chen, if there's gold next time, can you inform me first?" "I was the first to inform you. You could have purchased it in your own name." Amelia smiled bitterly. Her initial thoughts were simple. She couldn't possibly give him such a high price. Therefore, Chen Zhao would definitely choose to sell it to the bank, not to her. Moreover, neither she nor her family could afford $10 billion to buy so much gold. Her family couldn't afford such a huge amount of gold. She didn't think that Chen Zhao would split 300 tons of gold. If he sold 300 tons of gold to the bank, or split it into 2 or 3 portions, the value would be different. "Anyway, my family wants to buy a batch of gold. How much can you eat?" he asked. Chen Zhao asked. "Less than 100 tons. Amelia glanced at Chen Zhao. "You really have it?" "I don't have 100 tons, but I can take out a few dozen," Chen Zhao said. "I want all of it, according to the price you agreed with the bank." "Sure." Qin Zhao didn't want to go through the trouble of negotiating again. When will you deliver it? In a few days, Qin Zhao said. I'm busy now. Okay, let me know when you're free. I need to raise money too. Not everyone could have a terrifying cash flow like Qin Zhao. Even Amelia and her family's assets were more than 10 times that of Qin Zhao's. But the cash they could actually take out was probably less than 1/10 of Qin Zhao's. Then I'll have someone send the gold to your house first. When you've collected the cash, transfer it to me. Aren't you afraid that my family will betray you? I'm not a good person, Qin Zhao said calmly. I'm not restricted from attacking normal people, Qin Zhao said calmly. If you harm my interests, I'll destroy you physically. Amelia's expression froze. She'd only been joking. Now she suddenly felt that her joke wasn't that funny. I'm a bit busy these days. Just let me know when you're transferring the money. After discussing with Amelia, Chen Zhao left the office. Andrews had been waiting for Chen Zhao outside. Mr. Chen, the bank's money has been transferred to your account. Yeah, same rules as before. Don't give me those high-risk investments. You can do the rest. Got it, Mr. Chen. Andrews suppressed the excitement in his heart. With more than $10 billion in his hands, he felt like he could call the wind and summon the rain. If a rich person had $1 million and invested it on Wall Street, he might lose everything. If the rich person invested $100 million on Wall Street, there was a high chance that he wouldn't lose anything. But if it was $10 billion, he could be the banker himself. Investing money into high-risk projects? Which project could take in more than $10 billion in cash? If he could be the banker, he obviously wouldn't be the banker. Chen Zhao trusted Andrews quite a bit. At least, he was very obedient. Oh, Andrews, help me select some aircraft manufacturers. I want to buy a few planes. Okay, Mr. Chen. Andrews nodded. Mr. Chen, what type of plane do you prefer? I plan to buy 2 planes, Qin Zhao said. One would be best if it's a large one and a small one. Mr. Chen, Gulfstream would be the best for a small private plane, Andrews said. As for large aircraft, there are many competitive companies. Airbus and Boeing are the leaders in large passenger aircraft. Sure. Organize the information and give it to me. Qin Zhao walked a few steps and stopped. I have a few friends who came from China. They want to go hunting in the forest. Mr. Qin, is tomorrow okay? Okay, tomorrow. Qin Zhao nodded. Then, Qin Zhao went to the hotel. Boss, are you done? Zhang Ting was a bit surprised to see Qin Zhao so early. When Qin Zhao called yesterday, Zhang Ting was beside him. She heard Qin Zhao say that he had something to do with the contract this morning. She thought that Qin Zhao wouldn't even have a day. I'll just sign it. It won't take long. Qin Zhao shrugged. I'll take you to Beverly Hills in the afternoon. Zhang Ting's eyes brightened. Beverly Hills was a top shopping mecca. She also heard that there was a high chance of meeting Hollywood stars there. 9 Heavens Divine King. Chapter 2565. Beverly Hills had the title of the most luxurious residential area in the world. There were countless mansions here. During the economic crisis, property prices all over the world plummeted. Only Beverly Hills property prices were still rising steadily and slowly. Of course, Beverly Hills didn't just have mansions. Wilshire Avenue was the most famous commercial street in Beverly Hills. There were many commercial buildings and countless top department stores here. Close to 200 specialty stores were located in the center of the commercial street. For example, Roeder Avenue was also a gathering place for all kinds of top luxury and trendy brands. Each store was dazzling and uniquely designed. It could even be said that the owners of these stores were at least multimillionaires. Qin Zhao had once wanted to buy a few stores as investments. However, even if the stores along the street were for sale, they were all much higher than the actual price. A small store with an area of only about 20 square meters would cost $20 to $30 million. There was also the farmers' market, which was known as the gathering place for gourmet food. It gathered the most famous food in the world and was also a favorite place for tourists. In addition, Hollywood stars and celebrities liked to open shops here, and they were successful in every endeavor. There were also many attractions here, many of which had been filmed in movies. One afternoon wasn't even enough to walk around. However, for Zhang Ting and the others, it was a crazy journey. Qin Zhao had seen this expression on Portia's face before. It was the kind of crazy expression that would appear on people's faces when they saw famous brands and luxury goods. These girls had completely lost their minds and were buying luxury goods that were far higher than their income. It was just like when Portia was in Shinjuku, Tokyo. It seemed like all the women in the world were the same. They walked in and out of every luxury and brand store tirelessly. As for the men who didn't want to shop, Chen Zhao arranged for them to sit in a restaurant. "Qi, are you sure you want to buy these shoes?" Zhang Ting also lost her composure, but she was still shocked when she saw the price tag on the shoes. $13,500. That was in US dollars. "But I really like them." She was conflicted. "Buy them if you like them," Chen Zhao said casually. "Treat it as a gift." "Boss, that's not appropriate." "There's nothing inappropriate about it. You guys can also choose something within $20,000. Treat it as a gift." The girls all screamed in excitement. They wanted to pounce on Chen Zhao and give him a few bites. When Chen Zhao paid, Zhang Ting didn't even dare to look at the long bill. "Since we're out to play, let's enjoy ourselves. There's no need to dampen everyone's spirits. Boss, it's not easy for you to earn money. Your behavior is simply, you want to say that I'm a nouveau riche again?" "No, it's a prodigal son." Prodigal sounds better than nouveau riche. "Boss, alright, that's enough. You guys answered my questions before and helped my friend solve a lot of problems, so he asked me to thank you properly. I won't spend any effort on it. Rewarding you with money is the only way I can think of." Zhang Ting was speechless. She felt that Qin Zhao was just making up excuses. Qin Zhao dared to pay, and so did the girls. By the time they finished strolling around Roder Street, everyone was carrying big and small bags. "Let me take it back to the hotel," Qin Zhao said. "It's not convenient to carry it like this." Zhang Ting patted her head. "Boss, that's enough for today, right?" She was really afraid that these little girls would go crazy and cause her to lose all her fortune. The cheap ones cost $200 or $300, and the expensive ones were endless. "Alright, let's go find the guys first. They'll probably have their butts rotten from sitting in the restaurant for the whole afternoon." In the next few days, Zhang Ting watched Qin Zhao spend money like water. It was difficult to visit all of Los Angeles in a few days. But if they had money, they could really enjoy most things. Basically, Qin Zhao could satisfy whatever they wanted to see or play. For example, concert tickets or boxing tickets. Qin Zhao settled them with a phone call. On the 7th day, the studio was finally going back. Everyone was enjoying themselves so much that they forgot to go home. Qin Zhao sent them to the airport. "I've already checked your things," Qin Zhao said. "Be careful on the way. Work hard this year, and I'll arrange for you to go abroad again at the end of the year." Everyone looked at Qin Zhao expectantly. "Boss, can we choose our own place?" "Yes." Qin Zhao nodded. "If you can do something that satisfies me, even if you choose the moon, I'll send you there." Then Qin Zhao looked at Zhang Ting. "Zhang Ting, expand the studio and hire more people. Don't you want to animate your work? What kind of animation can you make with just a few people? Are you going to outsource to other companies?" Zhang Ting was speechless. That was her original plan. Outsource to other companies. She could already guess what Qin Zhao was going to say next. "How much does it cost to set up an animation department?" "Boss, it's a lot of money. The animation department will either train new people or poach old people. Also, some equipment. How much?" "Boss, it's not a matter of money. Even if we set up an animation department, we'll be incurring losses for the next few years. Who knows when we'll recover our costs? You should know the situation in the domestic market." There's a market, but we need to develop it. It's not a big deal to lose tens of millions a year, as long as you can find me more people with brains. Qin Zhao's real goal was to find more people. If he had similar problems in the future, they could help him plan. Boss, if you really want to make money, other industries are more profitable than Chinese comics. Don't think that Chinese comics are rising just because Nez's box office hit. Look at how many Chinese comics died in the past. Okay, I understand what you're trying to say, Qin Zhao said calmly. I've never thought about making money from Chinese comics. I just want to do something for them. Even he felt a little guilty when he said this. His goal had never been so noble. Just tell me a number. How much do I need to invest in the early stage, and how much do I need to invest every year in the future? 200 million in the early stage. In the future? I'm not sure. Okay, find a professional manager first. Since we're going to set up an animation department, it can't just be a studio. We have to set up an animation company. 9 Heavens Divine King. Chapter 2566. Qin Zhao could get Zhang Ting to start a studio. A studio didn't need much management. Everyone could just focus on cleaning. However, it was different for a company. Boss, can I find someone I know? Zhang Ting asked. Sure, but I'll send someone to the finance department myself, Qin Zhao said. It wasn't a matter of trust. Any company had to be supervised. Without supervision, unspeakable things would grow. It was unavoidable. Just then, a group of people walked out of the airport. A group of bodyguards in black surrounded a man from Central Asia. Qin Zhao. It was Bifla. How did you know my flight would arrive at this time? I don't know, Qin Zhao said casually. I'm here to send my friends off. Boss, you have guests. We'll go into the departure lounge first. Okay, I won't send you guys in. Director Zhang, that Central Asian guy looks very powerful. He has 20 bodyguards alone. Of course, Zhang Ting whispered. He's the richest man in Central Asia, Gunbai Bifla. Our big boss knows someone like that. I thought he was just a nouveau riche. What are you thinking? Our boss is smarter than anyone. Do you really think he's a nouveau riche? Smarter? Really? I just think he's dumb. He's a university professor. His knowledge can only be higher than yours. Zhang Ting rolled her eyes at her assistant, Xiao Qi. You think he's dumb because he doesn't want to argue with you. Zhang Ting didn't know what business Qin Zhao did. But after interacting with Qin Zhao for a few days, Qin Zhao often didn't hide his calls from her. Once, she heard Qin Zhao say that he would chase them out of the California market and inform all the supermarkets. If anyone put their products on the shelves, he would cut off their supply. Zhang Ting knew that Qin Zhao's business was definitely not small. No ordinary manufacturer would dare to run out of stock in a supermarket. Because supermarkets were the upstream of manufacturers, they were usually in a strong position. Many times, if a manufacturer offended a supermarket, then it wouldn't be the manufacturer cutting off their supply. Instead, the supermarket wouldn't even give them a chance to put their products on the shelves. This was because almost every product had products of the same type and quality. Supermarkets didn't care if they had one more or one less product. Yet Qin Zhao could say something like that with such confidence. In that case, Qin Zhao's products definitely had a strong consumer base. And he even knew a big shot like Gunbai Bifla. Looking at their interaction, it was not something an ordinary business partner could compare to. Without a certain background, people might not even bother with you. If Qin Zhao wasn't married, he would already have a child. Zhang Ting couldn't help but say that Qin Zhao was tempted. Although she came from a good family background, she couldn't compare to Qin Zhao in terms of family background. In the past few days, Qin Zhao had probably spent more than what she had worked hard for in the past few years. There was also the wealth that Qin Zhao had displayed in the past few days. That super cruise ship was estimated to cost more than $100 million. Also, he came to the hotel in a different car every day. Just the portion 918 alone had already gathered 4 colors. Chen Zhao, you said you found a way to break through? It's hard to say. I just found some ancient books and studied them. Combined with my own situation, I came up with a solution. Chen Zhao didn't hide it. He directly took out the content of his modified cultivation method. Bifla took it. It was arranged with the cultivation method of the small world, Chen Zhao's experience and thoughts, as well as the research process. Bifla read carefully. His expression changed. He couldn't tell if it was good or bad. How is it? I can't tell. I've never heard of a small world having a cultivation method. Then wait. Old Zhang and Blood Mary should be here today or tomorrow, Chen Zhao said. Bifla nodded. The 3 of them had talked on the phone before. The 3 placed great importance on this meeting. After all, in the current world, the 4 of them were already at the peak of humanity. No one could give them guidance. They had to figure it out themselves. If the 4 of them were still hiding things, in the end, none of them would be able to break through. If one of them could break through, the others would all die in the future. The person who broke through would also protect their heritage for the sake of their past relationship. This was based on their current status and future considerations. Thus, no one would hide things on their path of advancement. They couldn't hide things. Bifla had come publicly this time. Zhang Tianyi and 23rd Blood Mary were both very low-key. They didn't let anyone know that they'd come to Los Angeles. The 3 leaders were all here. Chen Zhao came to their gathering. Without wasting any time, he went straight to the topic. Look at this first. Chen Zhao took out the cultivation method of the small world. This? 23rd Blood Mary glanced at it, and then shook her head. I don't understand. Zhang Tianyi took it and studied it carefully for a long time. Then he looked up and asked, This is used to cultivate the small world, right? Chen Zhao nodded. 23rd Blood Mary's expression changed. In the past, she'd always been under Zhang Tianyi's name. She'd been a bit unwilling at first. But now, she had to admit that Zhang Tianyi's title of number 1 in the supernatural world wasn't just for show. The symbol of Shang-Qing is the small world. So, I'm thinking if the small world is the key to breaking through. Why do you think so? I don't think so. In the beginning, my goal was to cultivate the strength of my pocket world. However, after searching for half a day, I discovered that there was no cultivation technique for cultivating the strength of my pocket world. Instead, I found relevant information in an ancient book. Can I see that ancient book? Zhang Tianyi asked. Chen Zhao shook his head. No. Zhang Tianyi nodded. He didn't ask why. Since Chen Zhao had gathered them, he definitely wouldn't hide it for no reason. Since he hadn't taken it out, he must have his own reasons. Bifla and 23rd Blood Mary also understood. This cultivation method of the pocket world was obtained after I modified it from that ancient book. Apart from sharing and exchanging information, I also hope that you can help me perfect this cultivation method of the pocket world. Chen Zhao paused. Now, if you don't understand anything about this method, you can ask. I'll try to answer you. Chapter 2567. Chen Zhao, is it necessary to use Nirvana's flame to refine it? No, but Bifla and I both know Nirvana's fire, Chen Zhao said. But I'm not sure if other types of flames will work. When I was writing this, I tried using my Nirvana's fire. It works. It's also the only fire elemental spell I know. Nirvana's fire? Bifla taught it to you. Not really. We studied it together, Bifla said coolly. I only learned it before Chen Zhao and gave him some pointers, Bifla said indifferently. I also cultivate a fire elemental spell. I don't know if it works, Chen Zhao said. Zhang Tianyi said. If it's not possible, I guess I'll have to use your Nirvana's flame cultivation method. I know hellfire, but I don't know if it works, 23rd Blood Mary said. I don't think you have to use fire, Bifla said. Bifla said. Fire is used because it is the fastest way to achieve the effect of change. However, if there are other powers and attributes, it is not impossible to achieve the effect of change. Zhang Tianyi thought for a moment and nodded. I can't be sure yet. After all, there's too little data. But if other elements work too, we just need to make some changes here. In terms of theory, the other three were all above Qin Zhao. The four discussed for a long time. None of them had any intention of stopping. If this segment were to be replaced with the Venerable Spirit Temple's Qi-devouring technique of Mount Longhu's Celestial Master Sect, it might have an extraordinary effect, Zhang Tianyi said. The spiritual temple he was talking about was the highest cultivation method of Dragon Tiger Mountain's spiritual temple. It could only be cultivated by people in the Shangqing state. Since ancient times, the number of people who were qualified to cultivate this technique were few and far between. 23rd Blood Mary frowned. She looked at Zhang Tianyi. Old Zhang, are you sure you want to take out the spiritual temple? I'm not taking it out. I'm just taking a part of the technique. I'll also modify it. If Qin Zhao's technique succeeds, we'll all benefit greatly. If that's the case, I also have an idea. This part can also be modified. There's a special breathing technique in my school's holy fire technique. If we combine it with this technique, the effect will be even more outstanding. The 23rd generation Blood Mary couldn't sit still any longer. Zhang Tianyi and Baifla had both taken out their special arts. If she continued to keep it to herself, she would seem stingy. He might as well offer up the Scarlet Church's precious cultivation method for everyone's reference. Did you notice that the techniques we provided were meant for Shangqing realm cultivators to cultivate, but they weren't perfect? What Qin Zhao provided just so happened to make up for the flaws in our techniques. That's right. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. Although their ancestors might not be as strong as them, there was no lack of capable people among them. After all, everyone lived in a different era, and they were limited by the era. Perhaps their cultivation was not as good as today's, but in terms of comprehension or talent, there might be people with great wisdom among the ancient people. They might be faking it or personally comprehending it. It wouldn't be surprising if they left some techniques behind. However, they still couldn't comprehend the most important thing. What they lacked now was exactly what Qin Zhao had given them. The two worked together. After removing the unnecessary and conflicting parts, they combined their cultivation techniques. A complete and perfect set of techniques was finally born with the four's hard work. Make a copy for yourselves. Qin Zhao's face was full of joy. He hadn't cultivated it yet, but at least he had some knowledge. He could tell that this set of techniques was more complete and advanced than the ones he'd taken out before. It's a pity that I can't cultivate it yet. Baifla sighed, but this didn't stop him from copying the cultivation technique. Why? His territory has just been formed. It's not stable yet, and his cultivation is too low, the 23rd generation Blood Mary said. The 23rd Blood Mary said, Even I might find it hard to cultivate. Among the four of us, only you and old Zhang can cultivate it directly. Zhang Tianyi stroked his goatee. I also need to improve my cultivation after returning to the mountain. I think I'll have to take out the old pills. Otherwise, I won't be able to cultivate it in a short time. With that, Zhang Tianyi looked at Qin Zhao. You're the youngest among us, but your cultivation is the most profound. I really don't know how you did it. That's how handsome people are. You can't be jealous. What's this set of techniques called? Just take one word from our names or titles and combine it, Zhang Tianyi said loudly. I'll say sky. I can only say one word. Sky fire? Blood, the 23rd generation Blood Mary said. Fire, Baifla said. Blood fire? Fire blood? Sky fire? Sky blood. In the end, the four of them combined their words and came up with a name, Sky Fire Blood Roar. Qin Zhao sighed. He wondered if it was because the higher one's cultivation level was, the worse their names were. The other three also looked like they'd been fed shit. Forget it. Change the name, Baifla said. I think it's embarrassing to cultivate a technique with such a name. Then give it a good name. Qin Zhao snapped his fingers. If we can't think of a good name, we can find someone else. Who? A professional. Qin Zhao took out his phone. Zhang Ting, gather everyone for a long-distance video conference. Zhang Ting was frustrated. She felt that Qin Zhao was going to ask a ridiculous question again. Boss, everyone's here. What instructions do you have for our work? Give me a name for a cultivation technique. It's best if it's a cultivation technique used to cultivate the domain. It's best if it's amazing and awesome. Zhang Ting and the employees discussed for a while and suggested a few names. Qin Zhao and the others weren't satisfied. The new employees were all confused. They didn't know Qin Zhao, the big boss. But all the old employees knew Qin Zhao. At the moment, they were all thinking seriously, even more so than when they were working. Boss, I think the final form of a domain should be a complete universe. Why don't we call it 9 changes of the firmament? It can be divided into 9 levels. The first level is to have a domain, the second level is to evolve into a small world, the third level is to evolve into a galaxy, the fourth level. Qin Zhao, Baifla, Zhang Tianyi, and the 23rd generation Blood Mary's expressions changed. In an instant, all 4 of them felt their thoughts become clear. Direction! Their direction was pointed out by an ordinary person. Evolving their domain into a universe was too far away for them, but the idea wasn't wrong. Chapter 2568. Okay, firmament transformation it is. Qin Zhao snapped his fingers and said, Same rules. This is a good idea. The reward is $100,000. The new employees in the company were all dumbfounded. How could such nonsense get a reward of $100,000? Had the boss lost his mind? Also, why did the old employees look like it was only natural? Right. They all looked constipated just now. Were they racking their brains? Did they know this would happen? Boss, it's firmament transformation, not firmament transformation. Okay, you did well. This meeting is over. Boss. I have an idea too. Boss, listen to me. Boss, give me a chance. Unfortunately, Qin Zhao had already hung up. Everyone looked at Qin Zhao, deep in thought. They'd all realized the importance of a team. The team was made up of ordinary people. However, their minds were very active and different from ordinary people. Evolving a domain into a universe might be too unlikely. But what about a small world? The last piece of the puzzle they needed was finally complete. I'm going back, Zhang Tianyi said. He couldn't wait. When all his thoughts were clear, he'd regained his confidence. I'm going back too. So were Baifla and 23rd Blood Mary. They were still a distance away from cultivating this technique. However, they still hoped that they could start cultivating as soon as possible. After a short farewell, the 4 went their separate ways. Qin Zhao returned to the manor. His family was already asleep. He entered the river diagram and started cultivating firmament transformation. Qin Zhao spread out the nirvana flame and let it circulate in the heavenly pattern. Firmament transformation wasn't expanding the small world. It was changing the small world. The change was very subtle. Even if Qin Zhao circulated the technique for a full day, it wouldn't even grow by 1,000th. However, Qin Zhao could really feel that his domain was changing. Qin Zhao patiently circulated the firmament transformation over and over again. Under Qin Zhao's control, the heavenly pattern in the small world was like an old tree sprouting. It began to glow with life again. Unknowingly, it extended outwards. Qin Zhao's domain expanded a little. Moreover, the heavenly patterns in the small world seemed to be flourishing too. Qin Zhao thought of a question. Why hadn't the heavenly patterns changed in the past? According to his previous conjecture, Earth was the inner core of a supreme expert, and the heavenly patterns were the meridians. But now that the super powerhouse was dead, the heavenly pattern lost its vitality. No longer changed by the majority of the power. But now, with his own power, it was rejuvenated. Was it because of the nirvana flame? If the nirvana flame was the key, then old Zhang and the 23rd generation Blood Mary would have to ask him and Baifla for a cultivation technique. They would also need the Red Eagle's blood. At that time, he would be able to extort a huge sum of money from them. Chen Zhao gathered his thoughts and increased his speed. It took about 2 hours for each cycle to complete a full cycle. Furthermore, every complete revolution would cause the domain to change by 0.001%. However, the process of cultivation was very boring. But Qin Zhao didn't plan to stop halfway. Last time on Demon Island, he was plotted against by Leviathan Aberrant Tajimis, and was almost sealed by him. This gave Qin Zhao a great sense of danger. This world was far more dangerous than he had imagined. Qin Zhao tirelessly cultivated the celestial transformation again and again. When Qin Zhao reached 200 cycles, the power of the small world had more than doubled. Moreover, the small world actually started producing vitality. Although the vitality produced by the small world was insignificant, Qin Zhao really felt that the small world was producing vitality. This vitality wasn't as much as the vitality that Qin Zhao lost under normal circumstances. The increase and decrease in vitality slowed down Qin Zhao's aging speed. Of course, this was also indirectly extending Qin Zhao's lifespan. According to this theory, the higher one's cultivation level was, the more life force the small world could produce. Would he really be able to achieve immortality one day? Qin Zhao suddenly had even more motivation. He started cultivating again. However, to Qin Zhao's disappointment, although the small world kept strengthening, it didn't produce more vitality like he had expected. Time flew in the river diagram. Qin Zhao's small world had strengthened several times. Although it had strengthened several times, there wasn't much change in its nature. Qin Zhao felt that vitality was more like the fruit that the small world had produced. If Qin Zhao didn't absorb it, the fruit would slowly grow. Moreover, the heavenly pattern that was close to Qin Zhao's body could be moved freely. Qin Zhao stayed here for almost 3 months. When he returned to reality, it had been less than 2 hours. Qin Zhao snuck back to his room and went to bed without a sound. Because of Qin Zhao's habit, he would go out in the middle of the night from time to time. He would sleep later than Fei Lai every time. So, Qin Zhao had long mastered the ability to sneak into bed without anyone noticing. He had a good sleep. Qin Zhao, who had just fallen asleep, suddenly opened his eyes. He wondered if he could inject vitality into Fei Lai's body through the small world. Qin Zhao put a hand on Fei Lai's waist. He controlled the heavenly pattern and connected it to Fei Lai's skin. Fei Lai moaned softly. She seemed to feel Qin Zhao's movements. Her eyes were still closed, but one of her legs was already on Qin Zhao's body. Qin Zhao didn't stop cultivating. His hands weren't idle either. "Darling, are you asleep?" Fine, Qin Zhao wouldn't be polite. An hour later. After being tormented by Qin Zhao for so long, Fei Lai didn't feel sleepy anymore. "Do you want to sleep a bit more?" "No, I feel very energetic," Fei Lai said. "Okay, I'll continue my experiment," Qin Zhao said. "Experiment? What experiment? You're using me as a test subject? It's good for you." Qin Zhao reached out and grabbed Fei Lai. "Don't move. I've read a Taoist book before. There's a technique called dual cultivation. Is that what you're using now?" "I don't know how." Qin Zhao rolled his eyes and continued to inject vitality into Fei Lai. "I feel something seeping into my skin." "Did you do it?" "Yes." Qin Zhao nodded. It seemed that the vitality condensed by his small world could indeed be given to Fei Lai. However, it wasn't a lot for Fei Lai. It seemed that he would have to wait until the small world produced enough vitality before giving it to Fei Lai. This bit of vitality was only enough for 1 or 2 days. Chapter 2569. With Qin Zhao's life force, Fei Lai seemed to be full of energy. They couldn't sleep, so the two started making babies again. Suddenly, Fei Lai felt Qin Zhao's movements pause. "What's wrong?" "In the sea," Qin Zhao said. "A servant I once enslaved has moved to the designated location." Nanchi Island, which Sardin was carrying, had already moved to Chen Zhao's private sea. 30 minutes later, Chen Zhao picked up the phone. Rasfa, time's up. What? Time? Chen, can't you see what time it is? Okay, sorry to bother you. Watch the news tomorrow. What are you talking about? Rasfa was still in a daze. His brain hadn't even recovered yet. Bye. Chen Zhao hung up and then called Risfar, Stephen, and Del. The last one was Amira. Then, Amira called Chen Zhao back. Chen, are you talking about the investment project last time? What's the specific situation? You'll know soon. Chen Zhao didn't say it directly. Amira wanted to ask more, but Chen Zhao quickly hung up. Amira immediately changed. Last time, Chen Zhao had told her about the investment. He only told her to keep some cash on hand for investment. But he didn't say what the project was exactly. He only said that it was on the sea. But what kind of project could there be? Fish farming? Stop joking. They were all billion-dollar people. Unless the farming industry could make more than 50% profit, they wouldn't be interested. Moreover, farming had always been a business that relied on the weather. Now that the pollution was so serious, farming in the sea was even more unreliable. Sometimes, a large ship might accidentally drop something, and all the creatures in the sea would die. So, it definitely wouldn't be farming. Just then, Amelia felt a slight tremor beneath her feet. The furniture in the room was also making soft noises. Earthquake? Although Los Angeles was in an earthquake zone, most earthquakes were senseless or mild. Just then, the tremors grew stronger. Then, the earthquake alarm sounded in the city. Amira didn't panic. Instead, she quickly ran out of the room to the lawn outside. As the tremors grew stronger, Amira silently waited for the earthquake to end. The tremor reached its limit after half a minute, but it did not weaken. Instead, it lasted for several minutes. Generally speaking, earthquakes rarely lasted for such a long time. Although the earthquake just now was strong, it was not destructive. A thought flashed through Amira's mind without any reason. This earthquake was related to what Chen Zhao had said on the phone. The earthquake subsided, but not long after, the tsunami warning came again. As a coastal city, especially a coastal city located in an earthquake zone, it was a coastal city. As long as there was an earthquake, it would be accompanied by a tsunami. However, judging from the tremor just now, the tsunami wouldn't be very big. The next day, a piece of news spread throughout the world. At 4:25 a.m. last night, a small island appeared in the sea 900 kilometers southwest of Los Angeles. It was an island of about 20 square kilometers. According to the analysis of geologists, this island may have been pushed to the surface by the movement of the continental plate. At this moment, a research ship was approaching the island rising from the bottom of the sea. Ka-Tuaviller lifted his right leg. This is hell. We can't help it, Ka-Tuo's assistant said helplessly. The island rose from the sea less than 5 hours ago. There's mud under our feet. At the moment, there were still puddles on the island. Everywhere was covered in thick mud. There were even dead bodies of dehydrated sea creatures in some places. Logically speaking, the tremor last night shouldn't have been able to lift an island like this. This is too strange. Look at that mountain. It's at least 500 meters high. This means that the mountain has risen at least 500 meters from sea level. But for it to rise that much, it needs a stronger earthquake. However, at this moment, a helicopter suddenly appeared above their heads. Ka-Tuaviller and his team all raised their heads to look at the helicopter. Just then, the helicopter landed before them. A woman and 2 fully armed bodyguards alighted from the helicopter. Just like them, the woman was wearing boots, and it was very difficult for her to walk. Alex cursed Chen Zhao in her heart. However, she did not show it on her face. She approached Ka-Tuaviller. Who are you? Ka-Tuaviller looked at the woman before him in confusion. I should be asking you that, Alex said. You're on private land. I want you to leave immediately. Private land? Are you kidding? This is American land, No, this sea area was bought by my boss half a year ago, so in principle, everything in this sea area belongs to my boss, including this island. What? How is that possible? This is the open sea. Why did your boss buy it? Viller asked. In fact, she had asked Qinzhao the same question half a year ago. But she finally had an answer. But even she could not be sure if this was part of Qinzhao's plan. After all, it was unbelievable for an island to suddenly appear from the sea. Or did Qinzhao have a super geological team that calculated this half a year ago? With Qinzhao's wealth, this was really possible. We're a research team, Viller explained. We're not a profit-making organization. We have no conflict with your boss. Private land was sacred and inviolable. This was the law. No reason could be used to violate this iron law. Even if they used the excuse that they were part of a scientific expedition team, it was still unacceptable. Without the permission of the owner, no one could enter casually. At this moment, someone suddenly exclaimed, "What's that? Look, what's that?" Beside a puddle in the distance, something was pushing up the mud on the ground. It was a huge lobster. At least, it looked like a lobster. It had a hard shell and huge pincers. When its body was pushed up, it seemed to be 2 meters tall. Everyone was stunned. What was that? Just then, the lobster started picking up the dead fish with its pincers and started eating. It did not seem to care about the people in the distance. Crack! The sound of the camera woke Alex up. "Everyone get out of here! Take the film from that guy's camera!" Alex almost screamed as she gave the order. "No, it's my personal property. You can't do this! You bunch of bandits and bandits! 9 Heavens Divine King." Chapter 2570. At this moment, Alex finally understood the value of the island. This was a treasure trove. An unparalleled treasure. A completely new species. It wasn't one that ordinary people couldn't tell apart. It was a giant lobster, just like the legends. This kind of thing could bring a huge amount of wealth. Alex's eyes turned red. She'd asked Qinzhao before if she could enter. But Qinzhao's answer was that she didn't have enough money and couldn't enter. But it was different now. She had more than $300 million. She definitely had the right to enter. Alex took out her phone and dialed Qinzhao's number. "Chen, I found something amazing on the island. No matter what you found, it's mine. Boss, you know what's here? Do you really think I'd throw dollars into the water?" Alex took a deep breath. She was sure that Qinzhao already knew what was here. Perhaps his team had discovered these creatures a long time ago, and calculated that the island might float up. So, he'd spent $5 million to buy this area. She had to admit that if it were her, she'd do the same thing. "Oh, boss, when should we expose this? Isn't there a research ship?" "Let them do it," Qinzhao said. "Got it." Alex nodded. Glancing at the camera that the security guard had snatched away, she said to the bodyguard, "Forget it. Give it back." The security guard glanced at the staff member he'd kicked. "You're lucky." "Chase them out," Alex said. "Send more people. Sink all the ships that approach this area without permission." "You can't do this. We have the right to stay here." The security guards didn't give them a chance. They kicked and shoved the team members away. That afternoon, the media all over the world reposted a piece of news. There was also a photo and a short video attached to the article. The photo was of a giant lobster. There was also a line of text. Then the world went crazy. Such a giant lobster. Was this not CGI? In addition, there was a video of a turtle that was more than 6 meters long slowly crawling out of the sea. However, the video was too short. Meanwhile, Steven, Rasfa, Risfar, Amira, Del, and Zola all called Qinzhao like crazy. "Steven, I've already told everyone to come to my place for a meeting. Don't call again or I'll block you. They'll be here soon." Not long after, all 6 of them finally arrived. Everyone couldn't wait to get first-hand information. Although the appearance of a new island was novel, similar things had happened in the past, and more than once, so its value was not high. However, in today's news that was spreading like wildfire all over the world, the things revealed by that photo and that video were too precious. "All right, quiet down," Chen Zhao shouted. "Are you guys going to let me talk?" These people all seemed to have fallen into money. They didn't give Chen Zhao a chance to speak at all. "Here's most of the information on the island." Chen Zhao tossed the prepared documents before everyone. Everyone fought with each other, directly tearing apart the information. Chen Zhao crossed his legs and ignored them. In the end, Stephen was the first to get the torn information. Giant lobster, up to 3.5 meters long, 2.8 meters tall when standing upright, 580 kilograms in weight. Scavengers, not aggressive towards living creatures. Giant turtle, up to 6.5 meters long, 4.8 meters wide, 2,800 kilograms in weight. Feeds on small and medium-sized fish. Not aggressive towards humans. Giant crab, up to 4 meters long, 660 kilograms in weight. Omnivorous, not aggressive towards humans. Giant eel, up to 18 meters long, 1.8 meters wide, 3,900 kilograms in weight. All living creatures are their targets. Extremely aggressive. Ichthyosaur, social amphibian. Up to 30 centimeters long, 15 kilograms in weight. Vegetarian. Knows how to use simple tools. Intelligence is close to that of primates. Everyone looked at the information on the information as if they were looking at a new world of novelty. There were 5 new species recorded on it, and each of them was very special. Just imagine, it was like the dinosaur island in the movie Jurassic World. Once a complete tourism industry was established, there would be an endless stream of tourists. This island was a treasure trove, a mountain of gold that hadn't been developed yet. Everyone present was a smart person, and they knew how valuable this island was. "The island is too small," Brisfar said. "We need to fill the sea, but we can't destroy the island's ecology." Brisfar was a businessman and had a clear mind. He knew that the island's greatest treasure was its unique ecology. However, the island was too small. It couldn't accommodate too many tourists. A high-quality tourist island not only had all kinds of facilities, but it also had to have a certain amount of space. If tourists came to the island and found it crowded, they would only lose interest. "Okay, let's talk about the share distribution," Chen Zhao said. "I want 30% of the 200 million, and you guys can split the remaining 70%. Also, this is just for buying shares. You need money to build the island too. The money will be used to buy shares." Among them, Zola had the least assets. Even including her Baroness brand, she only had $2 billion in assets. She didn't even have $100 million in cash. However, the opportunity to make money was right in front of her. She didn't want to give it up. No, this wasn't a chance to make money. It was a chance to leave a legacy for 100 years. "Zola, how much cash can you take out?" Rasfa asked in a low voice. The father and daughter had different identities, but they were father and daughter after all. They had to make up for each other at critical times. 100 million, Zola said in a low voice. "How come so little? Didn't Qinzhao tell you about this before?" "He did, but I didn't think much about it." Rasfa was upset, but he didn't take it to heart. That wasn't the whole truth. He still kept an eye on Qinzhao. He felt that Qinzhao wouldn't lie to him, so he still kept 500 million. Therefore, he only had $500 million on hand. Amelia's wealth was probably the highest after Risfar's. However, a large portion of her money was used to pay for Qinzhao's gold purchase. Therefore, she didn't have much cash to use. Of course, it wasn't that she couldn't afford it if she included her other businesses. However, the businesses that could be used to pay were all high-quality businesses that wouldn't be sold easily. Qinzhao had told them so early because he wanted to give them enough time to prepare. He wanted them to have enough time to accumulate cash and liquidate some secondary and tertiary businesses. Chen Zhao wouldn't accept them if they used secondary and tertiary businesses as payment. Chapter 2571. Chen Zhao, I have some scattered shares, Risfar said. They're worth more than 500 million. Risfar, you don't have enough money? I think they don't have enough. If they don't want it, I can buy it for them. Rasfa wasn't familiar with Risfar. He'd only met him a few times through Chen Zhao. They didn't have any interactions in private, so at this moment, he didn't give them any face at all. I don't need your kindness. Which eye of yours thinks I don't have enough money? Chen, I need a few days, Rasfa said. How about I provide a plan? Chen Zhao asked. Tell me the price you want, and then get a loan from me. Tell me your price and get a loan from me. The interest will be the bank's lowest interest rate. Of course, even if you're short on money, I won't force you. After all, we're still friends. If anyone can't get it, I can give you a year. If you still can't repay the loan after a year, then you can use your assets to pay me back. This is our agreement and my promise, Chen Zhao said. Chen, are you sure you want to lend us money? Rasfa asked, looking at Chen Zhao. Do you know how much I need? He just got a sum of money, Amira said. $10 billion. Everyone gasped. Dell looked at Chen Zhao. Chen, what did you do this time? Did you sell the brewery? He sold 300 tons of gold to the bank. Everyone gasped again. 300 tons of gold! You didn't find the treasure island, did you? I fished it out of the sea, Chen Zhao said, chuckling. He indeed had too much cash now. He wanted to sell it and collect some interest. Of course, the people before him were all his good friends. He couldn't give them high-interest loans, could he? So, he could only provide low-interest loans. Even so, Chen Zhao could only provide low-interest loans. In the end, the 6 of them bought 52% of the shares. They really couldn't buy more. For example, Zola bought 3% of the shares. She wouldn't be able to eat any more. Chen Zhao had lent her $500 million for the 3% shares. Of course, she could borrow more money to buy more shares. But if that was the case, she wouldn't be able to hold on. After all, this money required interest. But before the completion of Nanqi Island's construction, it would not generate any profits. The basic construction of Nanqi Island would take at least a year. In other words, in a year's time, she would not be able to earn any profits. Furthermore, the investment in the infrastructure also depended on the proportion of their shares. The first budget for construction was $10 billion. If Zola bought 3% of the shares, she would have to invest $300 million. She still had to ask Chen Zhao for a loan. This meant that she had to pay back Chen Zhao's $800 million loan. Based on the bank's lowest interest rate, Zola would have to pay back a few $billion in total. Her Baroness's annual net profit was only a little more than $100 million. In the first 2 years, almost all of the Baroness's profits were used to pay off the money she owed Chen Zhao. Of course, as long as Nanqi Island started to make a profit, the pressure on her would also be greatly reduced. However, according to their plan, they still needed to invest more money in the infrastructure. As for the money he lent out, it was basically transferred from his left hand to his right hand. The one who bought the most was Risfar. He was the most well-prepared. He spent $3 billion for 15% of the shares. The second was actually Dell. To be honest, Dell was not very rich, but he actually bought 11% of the shares. Even Chen Zhao did not expect Dell to be able to take out $2 billion. Both Risfar and Risfar knew Chen Zhao's background, so they knew many secrets that no one else knew. In fact, only Rasfa and Zola did not know about Chen Zhao's supernatural powers. Amira and Stephen knew too. Amira bought 10% of the shares, while Rasfa bought 7%. Stephen bought 6%. Chen Zhao still had 48% of the shares. Chen, you still have 48% of the shares. Do you plan to keep them or sell them? There's a lot of profit involved, so it's best to get more people in, Qin Zhao said. But if outsiders want to buy, it won't be for 1% of the shares. It'll be 200 million. Qin Zhao had already decided. Apart from the 3% he would reserve for Alex, the others would have to look at their status first, followed by their wealth. Why would they join without status? Rich? There were too many rich people in the world. As a profitable project, any rich person would want to do it. Alex's phone had already been ringing off the hook today. They all wanted to talk to her boss. They weren't idiots. For example, there were not many islands in the world with better project resources. Hawaii's only advantage was its sunny beaches, spring all year round, and a few crater volcanoes. But Hawaii's GDP had reached $700 billion last year. Tourism accounted for 70% of the GDP. Nanki Island's project was much better than Hawaii's. As long as Nanki Island's GDP could reach 10% of Hawaii's, it would be a huge profit for the shareholders. Should we give the island a name? Qin Zhao asked. He didn't plan on using the name Nanki Island anymore. After all, the name was a sensitive one. As a pirate base, some people still knew about Nanki Island. To avoid unnecessary trouble, Qin Zhao felt that it was better to give it a new name. The creatures on the island are all huge, Brisfar said. Let's call it Titan Island. No, it's not special. The island's ecosystem is self-contained. How about calling it Creator Island? It sounds like some evil organization's experimental island. Are you sure tourists will come after hearing this name? Mystical Island, Stephen said calmly. Mystical Island? Isn't that too ordinary? Yeah, I think it's ordinary too. Everyone was questioning Stephen's naming standard. But Stephen said calmly, the more ordinary it is, the more effective it is. Mystical Island. This name can make people curious about the island. It doesn't need a fancy name. Everyone looked at each other. They seemed to be moved by Stephen's words. How about we hold the first shareholder meeting and vote to decide if we should give the island this name? Qin Zhao asked. Sure, let's vote. Chapter 2572. Mysterious Island. Those who agree, raise your hands. 5 yes and 2 no, Qin Zhao said. Then it'll be called Mysterious Island from now on. By the way, Chen, Stephen suddenly asked, the ingredients I took from you in the past aren't from Mysterious Island, right? What ingredients? Amira asked. Qin Zhao's face darkened. Great, now he had another pair of hands. An hour later. Isn't this too good? Amira exclaimed. What ingredients are these? I've never had such good food before. Chen, can you supply them in bulk? Limited, Qin Zhao said. But he suddenly thought of Demon Island's otherworldly god. It tasted better. Compared to Qin Zhao's other ingredients, he could supply more of them. These top-level delicacies are definitely the best way to attract customers, Amira said. Qin Zhao thought about it. Every year, he would take 5 otherworldly gods from Demon Island. This wasn't enough. An adult otherworldly god would at most be 40 tons. 5 would be 200 tons. 200 tons wasn't enough for an island's tourists. I have another ingredient that's better, Qin Zhao said. But the supplier can only supply 100 tons a year. 100 tons isn't a lot, but it's not a lot either. Indeed, it's a bit awkward. Qin, then let's open a top-level restaurant on the island and invite Michelin magazine to cover it a few times. Didn't you say that Michelin magazine can't be bribed? Bullshit. Even the congressman can be bribed. Why do you think the editors of Michelin magazine can't be bribed? Are they better? No problem opening a restaurant, but the ingredients need to be paid separately. Give us the ingredients first. We need to evaluate it ourselves. Stephen grinned. He'd gotten a lot of ingredients from Qin Zhao. He knew how good Qin Zhao's ingredients were. After eating Qin Zhao's ingredients, he even felt that the other top-level ingredients were trash. Having a strong appetite was a scary thing. It would make people lose their expectations for most delicacies. Everyone was also very interested in the top-level ingredients Qin Zhao mentioned. The ingredients Qin Zhao had taken out were already enough to fill their stomachs. But they weren't even the top-level ingredients Qin Zhao mentioned. How good would the top-grade ingredients be? Okay. Qin Zhao stood up and went into the kitchen. Soon, Qin Zhao came out with a large square piece of meat. Although this piece of meat had been frozen, it was placed in a low-temperature area, so the meat retained its original texture. It had to be said that the god of otherworldlings was a top-notch ingredient. It made sense that even the great demon king couldn't resist its flesh. Let's not talk about its taste, just the cut pattern alone was like an exquisite painting. After the spirit she had carried fused with the meat itself, it emitted a faint fragrance. Even if it wasn't cooked yet, it was already enough to make people hungry. Rumble, Stephen gulped. Fuck, if you have such good ingredients, why haven't I seen you take them out? Stephen said, wiping his mouth. At this moment, Amiran narrowed his eyes and said, I think 100 tons is too much. 100 kilograms a day should be enough. Everyone could not help but glance at Amelia, before nodding thoughtfully. Indeed, no matter how good things were, if there were too many of them, others might not treasure them. The rarer something was, the greater its value. If you have extra, sell it to me. Amira suddenly laughed. In your dreams? Stephen snorted. He wouldn't give Amira any face. So what if Amira was richer than him? Regardless, the 6 of them still managed to extort a piece of meat from Qin Zhao. They'd already tasted it at Qin Zhao's house. Alex, how much do you plan on buying? Qin Zhao asked. Alex gulped down the water in her glass. She'd been really busy today. Because she was Qin Zhao's representative. So, she was also brought to the public. Everyone was asking about the cooperation. Even some top-tier crocodiles wanted to get a share. But hearing Qin Zhao's question, Alex felt even more pained. She'd thought that she was already very rich. Last time, she'd gotten $290 million from Qin Zhao's commission. Adding on her miscellaneous assets, her total was over $300 million. But Qin Zhao, that D*Ned bastard, asked for $200 million for each 1% of the shares. In other words, she couldn't even afford 2% with her current cash. Even if she used her assets as collateral, she could only get $20 to $30 million. How many more shares do you plan on selling? Alex asked. My friend already bought most of the shares, Qin Zhao said. I need to reserve 30% for myself, so there's 18% left. Alex really wanted to wave her hand generously and say, I'll take care of the rest. Unfortunately, she didn't have the courage. Even for her, 2% of the shares was too much. She couldn't eat it. Even though she knew that every bit of the shares was priceless, she couldn't help it. But she just couldn't eat it. How about this? Qin Zhao said. I'll lend you the money for 3% of the shares. No interest. Alex stared blankly for a moment, then silently nodded. Just then, Qin Zhao received a call from Denver. Denver, what's up? Mr. Chen, that island is yours, right? Qin Zhao was stunned. How did Denver know? How did you know? Ms. Alex is your personal lawyer. Fine. Mr. Chen, do you have any development plans for the island that has emerged from the sea? Yes, but it's a big project. Qin Zhao wanted Denver to back off. But Denver didn't back off. Instead, he said, Mr. Chen, no matter how big it is, I hope to get involved. Mr. Denver, do you know the conditions? I have $1 billion, Denver said. You're that rich? Mr. Chen, did you forget? I also have shares in Dashin Beer. But those shares can't be sold, Qin Zhao said. If you want to sell it, you can only sell it to me. This was the condition when Qin Zhao had given Denver the shares as a bonus. If Denver wanted to sell the shares, he could only sell them to Qin Zhao at 120% of the market price. I can mortgage it to the bank, so it's not impossible for me to take out $1 billion. Do you know how much someone offered me? I don't know, But I asked around and found out that someone offered Ms. Alex $55 billion for 3% of the shares. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.